Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Became a Cyber Demon Part 9. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
I had to pick the primary base for the Japan Air Self-Defense Force. This is a terrible idea, Naruto muttered to himself in the shadow of night as he used a pair of special binoculars to get the best layout of the area he was about to infiltrate as part of his mission to mess with allied US armed forces and get American allies to improve. Oh well, as long as everything doesn't outright turn to shit, I should be fine by myself, he mumbled into his mouth. He wore his trench coat, makeup to cover up his whisker marks, and sunglasses pulled up to his forehead so he could use his binoculars, just as he had when he went on his mission to infiltrate the company building that held the nanomachine data he had given to the Patriots in Tokyo. Even with his normally spiky hair, he had managed to temporarily tame it by slicking it back, though he knew it would only last a few hours at most. Unlike other missions where he had to sneak into locations, his role in Dead Cell required him to show evidence that he had actually been there and had done something important that jeopardized their security. Additionally, the location had to be important enough to draw attention if he was successful in making a big commotion. That's the reason he decided to launch an attack on Chateau's airbase. It served as the main base for the Japan Air Self-Defense Force in northern Japan and was in charge of keeping an eye on Russia's maritime borders while defensively defending Japan's north. Not to mention that the new Chateau's airport, the main civilian airport in the Hokkaido region of Japan, was located directly next to the military airfield. Yes, it was a great idea to terrorize this target. Apart from the customary explanations, there existed an additional rationale for his selection of the target location, aside from his Dead Cell mission. It's likely that he would have chosen a simpler detail, but that was before he had taken his brief vacation and succeeded in meeting up with a friend. Flashback. Sapporo, Hokkaido, northern Japan, 2 days before. Before he heard back from the friends he had left with Olga more than a year before, Naruto had come to Sapporo with the goal of having a free day of his own. He considered going to a baseball game or something, or maybe getting a few gifts to help him get through the year-long time no see ass-kicking he might end up taking, depending on who was permitted to visit and welcome him in Japan. He had no idea that Sniper Wolf, the person who was supposed to get in touch with him, would beat him to Sapporo. Not only did he not anticipate that the elder female soldier would drag him to the closest hotel as the first course of action, but he also didn't anticipate that her hello would involve sex. Still, he wasn't complaining because he wasn't exactly having any sex while hanging out with Dead Cell and the Patriots breathing down his neck. The first leg of the copulation was rather violent because Sniper Wolf was upset with him. Fortunately, the scratches on his back healed in a minute, or else his back would have resembled a scratched-out tic-tac-toe board. However, he was adamant that she was intentionally scratching him, as she had not irritated him nearly as much the previous time. Her own way of letting him know that she was disappointed in him for being forced to stay in Africa alone. Lemon yeah, sex with Wolf was very necessary. Naruto rolled his eyes, took off his condom to throw in the trash, then sat down on the bed and ran his fingers aimlessly across Sniper Wolf's body. So yeah, I'm working for the jerks that got snake roped into going to Shadow Moses and did all of the shadowy crap like having me kidnapped. Luckily they still think you and the others are dead and I plan on keeping it that way until I find a way to fight back, he said, sounding more composed than he had in months about his predicament. Wolf scowled at that, but it wasn't directly from him. I have some news for you as well, little Proby, she said, taking Naruto's both hands and tracing around her body to the areas she wanted him to touch, especially her breasts. It turns out that one of the countries that wound up buying Ocelot's black market Metal Gear specs is the one that we're in. Hearing that news was unusual. Japan has a Metal Gear Rex? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow as he crawled over Wolf to get behind her and hold her in spoon position. That's really messed up, he said, pulling the bed's covers halfway over their bodies. He knew that unstable regions of the world had managed to pull something on Metal Gear in, but to hear that Japan actually managed to get some plans into their fold under the watchful eye of the US. It's not Rex. Wolf replied carefully, it's more of a cheap knockoff, more akin to the older, inferior Metal Gear models if anything, just like all of the others that have been spontaneously popping up in development since last year. Do you really think that Japan could assemble the resources to build a perfect copy of Rex? None of the countries that have the pirated plans can build anything close to being as advanced as Rex. Either their engineers are incompetent or Ocelot didn't hand over the entire plans for sale. The latter would have been the most intelligent. There are records of prototype Metal Gears turning up destroyed in countries all over. The plans for a railgun must have been separate from Rex's main design at first. Fine. I guess that's what I'll go and destroy for my Dead Cell mission, Naruto asked, nestling his face against Wolf's neck and shoulder. The one here is still dangerous though, right? It can still shoot off nukes, just not like Rex could. He was really hoping that he could pick something easy, but he couldn't take the slacker's route when something as significant as this came up. The less Metal Gear derivatives there are, the better. Wolf yawned and asked, "Do you need backup?" "No, I'm supposed to sort of make myself known as a part of the mission." Naruto replied truthfully, "I can't risk any wind of you being caught by the Patriots. You and the others being off the grid and me being close to Olga are a major advantage, the only advantages I have right now. All I need is the location of where the thing is being built. I can handle it myself from there." Then, feeling Naruto's cock stiffen up along her backside at the thought of having sex again, Wolf nodded and a smile crept onto her lips. "I'll tell you after I wake back up. I want you to fuck me again before you leave." "Seriously? It hasn't even been 3 minutes yet." With a deadpan voice, Naruto uttered, "A whole year without seeing a single woman up close," as though that clarified everything. Finalize flashback. Wolf told me that once word spread throughout the area that Japan was working on something there, a building was built not too far from the main area of the airfield. Because of its proximity to the civilian airport, no one would actually keep the Metal Gear on the main portion of the base. Neither would they place it anywhere close to the nearby training facility and have green soldiers guard it. It was thus situated halfway between the airbase and the civilian attraction lake, a few miles west of Lake Shikatsu and away from all of these. He had no assistance for this mission, but he had a very clear goal. Enter, locate the Metal Gear being built, and destroy it. If at all possible, he also had to look for any evidence of the plans used to build it, and either destroy or sabotage those as well. Then he was just supposed to walk away, making sure all the way that he left a record of his presence and the knowledge that someone had wanted them to know. The facility was surrounded by an open field that led to a large building without any fences. Naruto would have to take part in a procure on-site mission in order to have a unique experience. This meant that other than his HF blade, he would not be allowed to carry any weapons into the field. It was almost exactly the same as his last mission, which took place in Tokyo a few days prior, except that it was simple and didn't require a gun. Just his sword, no guns, no shuriken, no kunai, no metal wire, no explosives, well, just a couple of them. Even though he detested procure on site, it was required. By looking at the weapons he used, anyone with half a brain could recognize him if they watched him fight and could report on any damage he caused. He only needed to crash this little Metal Gear party. He didn't need to be personally identified and made into an international criminal. The only other item he had managed to bring for the procedure was the charger, which he had already placed. Naruto had placed plastic explosives on the base's anti-aircraft missile launchers as well as on communications equipment. But this was not going to be relevant until much later. From his reconnaissance, it was evident that the base had been built hurriedly for an unknown purpose because there was only one dirt road that led to it in the first place. It was small, nothing special. They must be following the shitty pirated plans to the letter. He rolled his eyes. The place must have been built back when the knowledge of the plans went out, just so that they would have some place to construct the Metal Gear. That piece of crap Metal Gear sure wouldn't hold a candle to Rex if he actually had to destroy it in battle. With shoddy plans based on Metal Gear Rex, less than a year was not enough time to create something better than Rex. Since there was no cover and the terrain was level, Naruto's speed would be the mission's silent demise. Actually, quite literally, because he found a side door guarded by 2 roving guards very quickly. He crept through the tall grass that surrounded the research building, sounding his footsteps as he went. As soon as Naruto and his clone emerged from the tall grass, they launched smashing attacks that knocked the 2 outside guards unconscious and quickly subdued them. With a puff of smoke, his clone vanished, and Naruto grinned to himself. Dealing with the soldier's dead cell typically faced meant that he wasn't up against opponents who had been in combat for a long time. A good number of these guys had never even fired a gun at a live target. to support the United States and the Allied forces in Iraq. The best members of the JSDF were sent there. He was going to turn the place inside out. It was almost unfair. He would probably not be there for more than an hour or so, but he had to get out of there before dawn so that his escape could be kept under cover of darkness. Lesser security measures were erected inside the hastily constructed building, such as no unique doors for him to navigate. How much time did they think it would take to create a superweapon? Put locks on the doors that are specifically designed for personnel. Given that the building was essentially empty and the main lights were off, it appears that patrolling the hallways wasn't a big deal either. This was not as much of a military research facility as he had thought. Inside, it wasn't exactly crammed with security personnel. Was that not beneficial to him? Of course, there were security cameras, which made things even better because they would definitely capture the blur of Naruto running through the corridors at a high speed. The kanji symbols, which he had almost forgotten how to read before traveling to Japan, pointed him in the direction of a weapons laboratory. But when he arrived and picked the lock on the door, he was very disappointed. The room where Metal Gear was being developed was small, with various international weapons scattered around, perhaps for scientific study. None of the guns were functional, though, as the majority had been disassembled and there was no ammunition in the room. Naruto was walking around the room, probably looking for anything to help him in his self-imposed mission, muttering to himself about his terrible luck. He came across a desk full of gun parts and was surprised to see one fully assembled weapon. A pistol with a bowl-shaped design surrounding the barrel. It was primarily yellow in color, and the gun's barrel didn't appear to be designed to shoot explosives or bullets. A small plate protruded straight ahead from the bottom of the barrel, and the structure surrounding it appeared to have markings resembling a grid, akin to those on a solar panel. A small meter with an indicator that pointed all the way into the green field, spanning from red to green, was located on the side of the gun. There was another trigger on the gun's grip, and he had no idea what it was for. Naruto examined the gun after picking it up. That was a weapon he had never seen before. With all of its accessories, it weighed no more than his typical SOCOM pistol, but it lacked a crosshair and a sight to help with aim. Glancing back at the table, he discovered a handwritten message. Formal testing of the solar gun prototype is still necessary to identify any other usable bugs that need to be fixed. The integrated solar panels of the weapon are fully recharged by sunlight. The weapon's recoil makes it impossible for inexperienced shooters to use it properly when firing a charged shot because it produces too much kickback. In fact, experienced soldiers have said that using the weapon requires two hands. The rate of fire is difficult to control for uncharged shots. The gun's power should be reduced, but it's unclear how to accomplish this while keeping the weapon functional. I propose that the solar gun project should be abandoned. After reading the note to the end, Naruto tore it to pieces and tossed the pieces to the ground, sneering, "Decrease the power of the gun?" Yes, exactly. He thought the solar gun sounded awesome, so we'll see about that. It didn't make sense to throw the gun away as a failure just because some scientists and green soldiers who hadn't engaged in combat could not operate it. A weapon isn't necessarily useless just because it can't be produced in large quantities, and Naruto had a soft place for anything or anyone who was wrongfully called a failure. He would take it for himself to personally witness the gun's usefulness. Naruto reasoned that this would be sufficient to alert someone to his level of intrusion into their facility. Even though it was a weapon that was going to be retired, it was more than enough of a scandal to inform Japan's military that such shoddy security protocols would not hold up in the future. Naruto moved through the facility in pursuit of his target, carrying the souvenir that was the solar gun. Something must have gone wrong in the weapons lab because all of a sudden the lights turned on and a very stern voice said, "Freeze!" Naruto skidded to a stop and turned around to see 5 men brandishing guns at him and yelling, "Don't move or we'll shoot." Oh well, enough time passed for someone to realize what was going on. With a blank expression hidden behind his sunglasses, Naruto simply drew the solar gun and aimed it at them while using his other hand to draw the HF blade. The men opened fire as soon as they saw him take out the 2 weapons. Gritting his teeth, Naruto began using the HF blade to block the bullets before simultaneously raising the solar gun and pulling the trigger. Several light bullets fired in a burst of semi-automatic fire struck the 5 men with the force of regular bullets, sending them flying down the hall and smashing against the wall, knocking them out cold. Naruto addressed the solar gun as though it were a person, exclaiming, "Holy crap!" as he studied its creation in astonishment. How the hell could they say that you suck? The weak bastards just couldn't hold you without the recoil knocking their aim off. He crept through the facility, sheathing the HF blade up while keeping the solar gun ready. Reaching the main hangar, around which the building was originally constructed, didn't take him long. He discovered his Metal Gear, which he was supposed to destroy, encircled by catwalks for maintenance. He knew it was the Metal Gear, but how, apart from the fact that the previously mentioned maintenance catwalks encircled it, it was identical to every other Metal Gear he had ever heard of, standing between 25 and 30 feet above the ground and having 2 legs. Its torso was extremely narrow, sitting between a very heavily armored top half that resembled a block and 2 reverse-jointed, armored legs, though not as heavily armored as those of Rex. He believed that a heads-up display would also be present once the machine was turned on, but the top half featured a cockpit that could be seen out of. There were weapons integrated into the front and missile launchers designed to launch a nuclear payload integrated into the top, but there were no arms. When Naruto saw the cannon positioned between the Metal Gear's legs, he actually laughed. He said to himself, "There are so many jokes I can make right now." Then, he became serious and concluded that the best course of action would be to destroy the damn thing by destroying the weak-looking torso, which was intended to allow the top half of the Metal Gear to pivot freely for a more flexible way to enable it to deal with close-quarters threats. Since the hangar was empty, Naruto decided to finish his work before anything went wrong, so he climbed the catwalk and started to plant all of the Semtex he had on him, under his trench coat, of course, onto the weapon's torso. Looking up, Naruto saw the name Metal Gear written in kanji, Metal Gear Haguru. With a shrug, he carried on planting explosives, completing his work and falling to the ground right before the main hangar doors opened. Shouting under his breath, Naruto slipped behind one of Metal Gear Haguru's enormous legs and used the catwalk to further conceal his whereabouts. The soldier's commanding officer yelled, "Lock the hangar down. Shoot anything suspicious or not in uniform. No one is getting into this place alive." Naruto whispered to himself, "Son of a bitch." All right, the cavalry had finally arrived. He had an idea, though, since they were unaware that he was in the hangar. It was time to discharge those earlier charges he had placed on their anti-aircraft weapons and communication. Without thinking, Naruto took out his detonator and depressed the button, sending a low boom back towards the actual airfield. "Hurry back into the cars. Damn it. It was a feint for an attack on the airfield, everyone back to the base." Naruto peeked out to investigate and noticed that the large number of soldiers who had been forming a line to enter the hangar had stopped. Instead, they had gotten into their jeeps and Hummers and were driving quickly back to the airfield, which was a top priority target. Misdirection at its best, if he had to say so himself, as only a few men ended up remaining behind, giving Naruto a triumphant smile. With the hangar door wide open, he decided it was time to get the hell out of Dodge and hurriedly departed from his hiding place, tuning his codec to the frequency to summon his platform board, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Before anyone knew what had happened to them, Naruto and his clones had ambushed the ill-prepared and jittery soldiers, beating them to oblivion. He then bolted from the hangar and started racing westward toward Lake Shikatsu, where he had asked Sniper Wolf to stash his platform board for him before she returned to the Gerlukovich mercenaries. The lake was 7 miles distant, and he intended to meet his board halfway before using it to flee. He pulled out a second detonator and pressed the button as he began to run through the tall grass that surrounded the research facility. He was hoping that the 2 explosions would confuse, frighten, and further misdirect the troops, preventing them from trying to find him before he fled. He smiled at the sound of his board's propulsion system whirring after a few minutes of running, then leapt into the air, only for the metal board to slow down as it approached him, allowing Naruto to land safely and stick with his chakra. He paused to look back towards the base he had just wrecked, observing the massive amounts of smoke billowing up from the anti-aircraft missiles he had destroyed, the communications area he had destroyed, and the hangar housing Metal Gear Haguru, which he had turned into a twisted metal wreck with all of the explosives he used to ensure that the weak point was fully exploited. Gunfire forced Naruto to turn his head in the direction of a speeding Hummer with a mounted machine gun. Clenching his teeth, he started to take off, hoping to escape the vehicle on his platform board. Remaining evasive as a small, fast target gave him the opportunity to fight back, but he was only carrying one weapon. Drawing the solar gun, he fired the Hummer's burst rounds at the military vehicle, causing it to swerve slightly but not sustain any damage. Fuck! Naruto yelled back. It wasn't going to break that damn thing with the solar gun, not the way he was shooting it, but it also wasn't going to break through the Hummer's shell or shoot through the glass using a non-bullet gun. Naruto accidentally pulled the second trigger, located further down the handle, and held it down, expecting the burst fire he had been receiving from the solar gun, in his haste to fight with a weapon he was unfamiliar with. Rather than a series of tiny light bullets, there was a loud noise akin to something charging. The gun fired a larger light projectile that struck the Hummer's front wheels, causing the axle and wheels to shred and violently topple over. When Naruto was on the board, he kicked it back, causing it to spin out of control for a brief moment before he was able to control his board again. He stopped, stared at the damaged Hummer, and then at the solar gun, smiling even more than when he saw it in action in the lab. "I'm seriously keeping this thing," he said. Then he looked at the meter on the side of the gun and frowned when he saw that it was empty. After completing his mission, Naruto took off southward on his board to reach the main part of the Japanese islands, where he would wait out his ride from the Dead Cell aircraft carrier. Colonel Jackson would undoubtedly learn of this attack and realize that he was the one who had initiated it. XXX. Briefing on mission, Otakon. You know, Snake? The goal is a failure. You can now go back, hey. Solid Snake. How come? You were the one who said that if it turned out that Japan possessed a Metal Gear version, that would be cause for concern with North Korea, Russia, and possibly even the United States. You called me back, but why? I've arrived already. Otakon. Because someone already took it out and beat us to the punch. Do you not read or hear the news? Solid Snake. You didn't enlist additional people in philanthropy to relieve me of some of the operational burden, did you? Since Natasha funded us and then went into hiding, I told you not to. Given what we know about, we need to exercise caution when deciding who to trust. Otakon. I am aware. Yes, I am aware. It had nothing to do with philanthropy, really. It was an all-out maverick assault. Not many people were killed, but whoever did it destroyed a great deal more than just the Metal Gear being constructed there. 5 people, at most, were slain. These were soldiers, not scientists. The attacker in the laboratories, according to survivors who saw action, was a young, blonde man with the ability to deflect bullets with a sword. It appears to be a pattern because, just a few days prior, an individual who fit the description also attacked a major Tokyo-based nanotechnology company. Strong Snake. Asterisk Psy the child. I can only think of one person who might be responsible for this. Naruto Uzumaki. Recall that he witnessed Gray Fox deflect bullets with his sword. After Shadow Moses, he also took Gray Fox's sword because he possessed the reflexes to learn how to stop bullets. You are aware of how susceptible youth are to such kinds of things. You think it's him, Otakon? Perhaps he's also trying to eliminate every Metal Gear offshoot he can locate? Snake Solid. I'm not sure, though it's possible that he only recently learned about it and wanted to put a stop to it before something more serious happened. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy. What, do you think we ought to search for him to hire? I wonder if Meryl and him are still together. Otakon. I don't think Snake is doing that as a good idea. To put it another way, I think I'd prefer not. Solid Snake. Are you still mad at him for Sniper Wolf? Otakon. Solid Snake. Asterisk Psy, you'll have to let go of that one eventually. He helped save the world and saved all of our asses. Had I been in his position, I too would have been compelled to murder her. If I had, would we still be working together? Otakon. You know what, he never even said he was sorry for it. They were friends. He had worked and lived with her for some time before he could just fight her and kill her that way without even seeming to care. You're acting as though I didn't essentially do the same thing to Gray Fox in Zanzibar land, said Solid Snake. You can criticize the young person for doing what he had to do, but I won't. However, I can't really judge since I wasn't as enamored with Wolf as you were. Otakon. I suppose. Long pause. High Snake, what romantic experience have you had? Solid Snake. Is that some sort of strange, random question that you're asking me? Do you honestly believe that in all the time I've had free time, people haven't been yelling at me to do something similar? You know I'm never going to be able to have kids, so really, what would be the point? Otakon. But it shouldn't matter about the second thing you said. All I wanted to know was. I don't know if Sniper Wolf and I would have had a chance or anything if you had said yes. I was just wondering if love could blossom on the battlefield, even for soldiers. Solid Snake. While I can't rule out the possibility, anything of that nature born in a place where death and sorrow are the norm is typically doomed from the outset. Whatever the circumstances, there really aren't any happy endings in a situation like that. If love blossoms on the battlefield, you must keep in mind that it will most likely stay there, just like any other flower. Furthermore, it can be destroyed instantly on a battlefield, just like any other kind of flower. Otakon. There goes that 180 IQ of yours once more. Sometimes I forget that you're a smart guy who can say things like that occasionally, Snake. I'm a scientist, not a philosopher, even though I may be intelligent. Solid Snake. Yeah, I apologize for popping your bubble and everything, but that's just my opinion. To hold Naruto responsible for Wolf's demise would be akin to holding him accountable for trampling on a lovely flower while he was fleeing gunfire. Anyone who appreciated the flower would be saddened by it, but it's an unfortunate circumstance. Otakon. I believe there is yet another compelling reason for us to locate Naruto, Snake. When Naomi spoke with you about Fox Dye, she mentioned that something she did with Naruto assisted her in creating a unique design for it. Perhaps if we locate him, we can figure out what it is. Perhaps it's a remedy. Solid Snake. Why not, but I wouldn't prioritize that. Anyhow, how do we even locate that child? This Japanese project is the first news that anyone has heard from him in over a year. Otakon. I suppose we'll just listen out for him. He will eventually resurface if he is genuinely attempting to accomplish the same tasks as us. The mission has been cancelled. Head on back, Snake. XXX. June 2006 Naruto, age 19, USS Wilderness. It was necessary for Naruto to take a brief break from his training and attempts to gain an advantage over the Patriots. The members of the unit were idling around in the common room of the dead cell section of the aircraft carrier, engaging in their usual pastimes. Old Boy was playing chess with Vamp, Fat Man was disassembling and reassembling his handgun, and Naruto had managed to get his hands on a 20-inch TV and a PlayStation 2, with his current game of choice being Mortal Kombat. Deception. Faye, I cannot see how the brat can stomach playing that garbage all day, Old Boy said, panned his eyes over to Naruto, who was kicking up his feet in another chair and appeared to be mindlessly pressing buttons without taking his eyes off the screen or blinking from his lazy stare. For the past 3 hours, he hasn't moved a single muscle in his body save his thumbs. What's left of that little brain of his will rot. Playing video games aimlessly, Naruto uttered a sing-song voice that said, "Fuck you." He was glad that other people, even phony ones, enjoyed as much ridiculousness as he did. Aside from that, what hope have I got in chess other than to be continually defeated by Vamp and you? Vamp moved a knight and said, "Tactics. Patience. Things like that. You could benefit from picking up a few tips on that. In the field of rapture, you tend to act rather brashly." The next round of Naruto's fight had just begun when he idly glanced at Vamp and said, "First of all, just because I don't like taking my time and waiting things out doesn't mean I don't know how. In Foxhound, I worked with Sniper Wolf, and that stuff was boring. If you want to practice patience, how about spending a week lying in a thicket or sand dune?" Then Colonel Jackson entered the room, dropped a manila envelope in Naruto's lap, and stood over the young man with his arms crossed over his chest. Old Boy gave an incredulous snort, and even Chinaman began speaking Mandarin under his breath, maybe calling Naruto a bastard of a liar, but he couldn't tell since he didn't speak it. "Okay, since you're not going to tell me, I'll just ask," Naruto said, pausing the game and raising an eyebrow at Jackson while looking down at the folder in his lap and up at his commanding officer. "Colonel, what's up with the folder? Do I have any more missions to complete? I made you take an IQ test before you went on your last mission alone," Jackson continued. "Your score is in the folder." Raising an eyebrow at Jackson, Naruto shrugged and shook his legs to move the folder off of his lap. "I don't care," he said, unpausing the game and continuing to battle. "You're indifferent. That's bullshit rapture. Everybody wants to know what their IQ is," Jackson said, picking up the folder off the ground and waving it in front of Naruto's face to divert his attention from the game. He stopped waving the folder in Naruto's face when the latter spat a small throwing knife from his mouth that punctured straight through the folder and stuck there, maybe as a warning to stop tampering with his gameplay. Dully, Naruto continued to play, everybody except me. He knew that his IQ wouldn't get him out of any kind of situation, particularly the rather embarrassing one he was currently in as the golfer for the Patriots, an anonymous group running the American state in the background and influencing Naruto through the future of his 17-year-old sister. An IQ test was nothing more than an ego boost or ego diminisher. He didn't want the former, and he sure as hell didn't need the latter right now. Jackson initially expressed doubt, but in the end he gave in and moved away from Naruto, believing that it was his decision. The rotund bomber stopped Jackson as he was about to pass Fat Man and asked Naruto, "So, Rapture, would it be too terrible for me to check your score?" He could have just accepted it and looked at it anyhow, but if Naruto hadn't been feeling game Y, he would have beaten his ass. He grinned. As boring as ever, Naruto said, "Knock yourself out." With this in mind, he tore open the sealed envelope and panned his eyes over Naruto's score, his grin turning into a look of shock as he handed back the test results to Jackson. "That's just impossible," he said, sounding almost crestfallen as he plopped back down in his seat. Everyone there knew that Naruto was far from the most scholarly person out of the lot of them, and then some. Whatever his horrible score, Fat Man was going to lord it over the blonde until he ran the joke into the ground. Jackson grinned broadly as he reviewed the results and said, "Well, look what we got here. Rapture, you scored about 140 points. That made everyone in the room look at Jackson, except Naruto, who was still playing games. "That's unfortunate," Naruto said nonchalantly, startling everyone in the room. "I had hoped for a score higher than 9,000. Damn it. I fucked up the fatality." "You guys are talking too much," Naruto scowled as he concluded in a dramatic, demonic, gravelly voice enhanced by a Kyuubi. After that, everyone in the room fell silent, save for the Mortal Kombat loading screen music, until Vamp said, "Rapture." The test scores don't go that high, figuring that since no one else was going to say anything, he might as well. In actuality, 140 is excellent. He stated, technically, it's an IQ of genius, totally missing the ironic illusion that Naruto had just attempted to make. With amusement, Naruto snorted, "Do I appear to be a genius in any way?" Clutching his head in his hands, Fat Man uttered, "An idiot savant. This is just like Rain Man." Naruto responded, "No it's not," while punching in buttons for combos. "First of all, I don't have autism. Secondly, even if I could count cards, none of you cheap bastards would ever take me to Vegas. Lastly, I don't buy boxers or anything at all from Kmart. At all. Have you even seen the film? How could some brain-dead little battlefield rat beat my score?" cried Fat Man in agony. "Have you cheated?" He posed an accusing question. With a shake of his head, Naruto said, "I had no idea that was a test. I believe the colonel was having an affair with me." Jackson said, "This indicates that you are a quick problem solver, after reading the summary of Naruto's score. When you're particularly stressed out or have some sort of disability, you perform better at work. Additionally, you discover unconventional yet fundamental approaches to tackle difficult issues that you would otherwise be unable to manage, and they typically yield fruitful outcomes. It's quite amazing." "Nice," Naruto remarked mockingly. "Now, will everyone please stop talking? I've recently discovered that Liu Kang's flying kick is a monster against that scaly bastard when we battle Onaga in arcade mode." Not caring that Vamp was still essentially staring at Naruto, Old Boy shook his head and turned back to his chess game. "There is no way on God's green earth that this brat is smarter than me," the elderly soldier uttered. Naruto smirked as he heard Old Boy swear at him in German, "God's earth is mostly blue since the world has more ocean than land." XXX. Naruto, July 2007. Age 20. On the aircraft carrier, Naruto would often spend his time by himself in his room. Missions had not been assigned to him since the beginning of the year, and when they had, it had been only to leave a dead drop, possibly for another operative under their control, which was a far cry from the frenzy of missions he had been forced to complete during his first year, and he wasn't sure how to feel about it. It's possible that they were running out of ways to use him, but either way, the time he had off from being sent on missions for Dead Cell and the Patriots back-to-back for the first time in a long time allowed him to train himself and his chakra manipulation skills, and by persistently bothering Chinaman until he revealed what he wanted to know, Naruto had gotten a hint on something pretty amazing. Dead Cell, the angry mystic, believed that using inner energy to allow one's body to adapt to the element in question was the way to work in harmony with nature, at least in terms of his own abilities. Naruto initially had no idea how to make that work, but he eventually devised a rather savage method to carry out the Chinaman's instructions. With his clone seated at his desk not far away, Naruto lay down on his bed, closed his hands in the ram seal, and started channeling chakra throughout his body. He then sighed and turned to face the clone, saying, "Okay, do it." Naruto's clone held up a taser without a cartridge, allowing the electric current to be seen, and without saying a word, held it directly onto his body, shocking him. Naruto held his concentration and chakra flow up, biting back a cry of pain, and after almost a minute, he released the hand seal, signaling to his clone to stop shocking him. After removing the taser from his body, Naruto began breathing deeply and deeply to calm the excessive voltage coursing through his body. Naruto had been doing this kind of self-harm for 5 months due to routine training. The reason he continued to do this was because he raised his hand, created chakra in his fist, and produced a brief burst of energy before it faded. It was functioning. His chakra had adapted to the element through horrible self-torture that he laughingly referred to as training, so he could generate electricity from his body using it, though at the moment he could only use it to augment his punches. Still, if he had known that he could alter his chakra by letting himself get electrocuted while molding it, he would have allowed Ocelot to test his little torture device on him a few years ago. Not really, though he had entertained the idea occasionally. And the one thing he had in abundance on this aircraft carrier was time. The Patriots knew exactly what they were doing when they had left him and Dead Cell on board, and they had a means of keeping him under observation at all times. Even in the rare instances when he was able to move freely and skulk around, he was unable to obtain any information about who they were, which forced him to change his original plan of action because he could not possibly find the people behind everything on his own, not even with the assistance of the team he had left with Olga. If he didn't know what to do in the first place, there was nothing they could do. He would almost certainly need to pull a liquid in order to free himself and Catherine. He would need to find a way to get his hands on something that would make him untouchable and that he could hold over their heads. Though it was preferable to the alternative of existing with the guillotine swinging high above his neck, and he had the resources, he really didn't want to do that, as Liquid had demonstrated there was really no way that it was going to be clean no matter how much firepower the conspirator had, and it had a whole different host of disadvantages that came with it. Though their training was over for the day, Naruto thought to himself, long-term planning is not my strong suit. He had to take action, though, because he couldn't continue living his life fighting someone else's battle. He'd killed for the Patriots and it had sickened him because, honestly, he had nothing against anyone he'd been ordered to kill. In fact, he really didn't like killing for no reason at all, but he was learning to be apathetic about it, to focus instead on the thrill of the mission, to the point where the more danger he encountered, the more he seemed to enjoy himself. There was something wrong with that, and he knew it. The sound of his codec going off, which no one else in the world could hear, sounded inside Naruto's head. He put his hand to his ear and said, "Hello. Uzumaki. You haven't called in a while, Olga," Naruto said, his voice becoming somewhat excited at hers. She hadn't, but she had still made her presence known. Every time he spoke with any of the others, Olga would chime in, overhearing what he was saying and telling them to tell Naruto what she wanted to say. She tried not to be obvious, but it was always obvious that she was listening in. "I was starting to think you were mad at me or something. Since I visited the Kuril Islands in the fall of last year, I have not heard from you. By the way, you're very welcome. I didn't need your help to catch my target Uzumaki, and especially didn't need you to catch him and leave him signed and delivered." Olga scoffed at the line, which he heard her say. "In any case, how did you manage to sneak past his militia and rescue him unharmed? You see, you're trying to make me angry by calling my abilities, which I call superpowers like guns and ninjutsu," Naruto stated coolly. "I can create my own hit squad with them to assist me in making things like that simpler. So when I realized you were there too, I had a clone take the bastard to you for assistance. He was sent on a mission to neutralize the same person Olga had been hired to capture or kill, but he handed him over to her because she needed the target more than he did and it didn't matter how the job was completed for him. Olga, on the other hand, needed documentation of her labor in order to be paid." Olga attempted to appear indifferent, but it was obvious that she was annoyed that Naruto hadn't shown up in person. "I don't see why you sent one of your useless clones instead of sending yourself to hand him over though." Olga was easy to rile up, but once Naruto got over the phantom pain of his clone's wound, it was still hilarious. I can see everything my clones see. I can even control them as if they're my own bodies, Naruto told her. So that means that when my clone told you that you were still cute, it was still me talking. I would say that I'm going to kill you for that when I see you again, but I want your help. She said with a serious tone, I'm calling in my favor from you, Uzumaki. It was his way of assuring her that no matter what was going on with him personally, he would help her and his other friends when they needed it. This was the first time he had been asked to assist her before, not since she asked him to try to take out Ocelot in Lyon in 2005. This got Naruto to sit up from his resting position in his bed to pay attention. He had sometimes shadowed Olga whenever it was convenient for him to help her out in little ways. You know that you don't need to call in favors for my help, Olga. Naruto replied sincerely. Tell me what you need and I'll see what I can do. I need you. I knew you'd come around eventually, Naruto smiled and said, Sweet, it's impossible that you detest me to the extent that you claim to. Where will I book a hotel room for our meeting, then? Over the phone, he heard an exasperated sigh that he hoped he could see along with a facepalm that said, No you idiot. I really need you to be where I'm going in person. I need to see you in person. I don't need clones or notifications that you're nearby. You must personally be present. He could escape somehow, he knew it. Maybe under the pretext of a mission. He could always ask for one since he hadn't been out in a while. Everyone knew that rapture got stir crazy very easily. Naruto nodded in agreement, not that she could see it. Name the place. New York City. Hearing Olga tell him the name of the city he was supposed to visit, Naruto arched an eyebrow. You have to get there as soon as you can. If you beat me and my father's men there, just wait for me. I'll let you know when I get there. Naruto remarked, shocked that she would actually set foot on American soil. You've never been in America before. He was going to ask her how on earth she was going to manage that, but she came across as quite honest about it. He could have tried asking her another question, though. What the hell are you doing in New York? I think it would be better to tell you face to face, but I only need your assistance. This cannot be done by me. It's not possible for me. Olga sounded a little upset when she asked for his help, please, but he had no idea what it was. She had been helping him for 2 years. The least he could do was stick his nose in and get her out of whatever situation she was in. I'll head there as fast as I can get away, Naruto said. I'm kind of stuck down around Hawaii right now on an aircraft carrier. However, the fact that she was even asking for his help in the first place stood out. Well, if you can get away, call me then. Then Naruto said, I'll see you soon. And turned off his codec before getting to his feet. He knew there was only one way he would be able to enter America and deal with any problem he possessed. Colonel Jackson never took this specific mission to attack a target of their choice in America because he didn't think it was the wisest course of action for the unit to take. It was never officially thrown out, it was just repeatedly pushed back as not being a priority. For as long as he had been a member of Dead Cell, there had always been the intent for an operation that would see them attack something in a major American city to test home front defense capabilities the way they tested America's allies with the same attacks. He would simply offer to do it himself. Whatever the case, he reasoned that he had to be present because everything that was destined to occur there just cried out, problem, to him, and Olga seemed to have no control over the situation either. As Naruto rose to leave his room and ask Colonel Jackson for his mission, he hoped that the unsettling feeling in the pit of his stomach was just his own spontaneous paranoia. With a determined expression on his face, Colonel Jackson gazed at Naruto, the young blonde dressed in civilian clothes, who was standing in front of his desk in his office. He reasoned that if he gave the child enough attention, he would probably change his mind about the request he had just made. Unfortunately, Naruto did not follow through on that plan. Rather, his expression grew even more lifeless and dull. The fact that he could sometimes just flip that switch was really unsettling. He was unable to keep his feelings inside on the battlefield. He was completely transparent. But in his spare time, he might become indifferent if he didn't have a valid cause to be concerned. At that moment, he didn't even consider that he wasn't being disobedient when he was receiving the cold shoulder from his superior. In fact, he was demonstrating initiative. Jackson said to Naruto in a stern tone, Rapture, are you crazy? This actually caused Naruto to smile and say, fucking Brad loves pushing my buttons. He had not even been able to attend Catherine's high school graduation. I can speak freely, right? Naruto asked, receiving a nod. People have been asking me that since I was younger. He said matter-of-factly before his smile faded. But not this time. No, I'm not crazy. Come on, Colonel. I haven't been anywhere in 7 months. The fact that they weren't even trying to work him and wouldn't let him see her forced him to call her on the codec. Fat man keeps planting little explosives all over the fucking place to try to either scare me or kill me, he said, sounding a little upset at the end. Chinaman's being a dick about getting dispatched more than me. Jackson asked, sounding doubtful. He's been trying to kill you? But it wasn't that unlikely. Damn conceited, crazy bombing bastard. Why didn't you bring this to me sooner? Jackson asked. Naruto sighed, because I can smell that stupid perfume he sprays on all of his bombs as his signature and I just defuse them. He doesn't use anything that would really cause any damage, that's why I don't know if he's just messing with me or not. Even if one of them exploded it wouldn't kill me anyway. With an elevated eyebrow, Jackson addressed Naruto, saying, I thought you said you were going to kill the next one of them that tried to attack you. It's already difficult for me to get upset when someone does something stupid, especially if it's something I can handle, Naruto told him. I'm walking on thin ice with golf cleats as it is. Ocelot had him play William Tell in Foxhound, Sniper Wolf had him play Hunt the Proby, and Vulcan Raven had him meditate for hours in the rain in South America and the snow in Alaska. It would take more than Fat Man's attempts to irritate him. The last bomb he found, the Kyuubi wanted him to shove it up the man's ass before setting it off. When Naruto simply blew up his toilet while the man was sitting on it, they reached a mutually beneficial agreement. Jackson said to Naruto, who remained silent, so you're just getting stir-crazy again. Naruto would have a better chance of getting permission to go if he had maintained his composure rather than adamantly insisting that he had to complete this mission. He was really asked to go and assist, so it was truly urgent. He owed Olga a lot because she had never asked him for a favor that would only really benefit her and because she had been there for him ever since Shadow Moses. Besides, even if he hadn't owed her, he would have gone out of his way to help her. I've had months to master my new tricks, and R&D fixed my new suit up. Come on, you know I can pull this off. I even have a place to run and hide to after whatever I plan is all said and done, Naruto said, shrugging off the colonel's accusations. You're attacking something military-based in the US Rapture. Jackson responded, not even a team of dead cell members are willing to take this mission. Why do you think I never assigned it to any of you? If you pull off anything it's going to cause a shitstorm. If you mess it up then the president is going to kick my ass, and I'm going to have to come kick your ass, if you aren't even dead by then. Naruto let out a scoff and leaned against. Don't give me that scaredy cat crap. You know I can pull this off. I'm the only one that's never been pegged. Everyone else has been partially ID'd at least once. All people have ever said about me when any kind of report on the stuff I've done goes out is that I'm a blonde guy. Whoop-de-fucking-do. That's really descriptive. Enough of that was true. When Naruto went to work, at least, he learned to hide his very distinctive special features, like his whisker marks, his bright eyes, and his wild hair, sometimes even dyeing it if he felt like it. They would never be able to identify him if all they had to go on was a picture of a blonde man. He definitely saw results. Furthermore, he was the unit's best escape artist. He was the perfect example of someone who could pull off a con and escape. So where are you going to hit if I let you go on the mission? With a sharp scowl, Naruto said, you know I can't really tell you that, Colonel. It's supposed to be need to know, and I can't even give you hint without blowing the gist of the mission. Although he was half-baked, at least he could indicate his intended destination. Nevertheless, the colonel remained essentially Naruto's babysitter for the Patriots, and the more he could elude their notice, the better. Though he liked Colonel Jackson, Jackson was still his overt handler, so even though he liked him, he couldn't really trust him. Whatever you do is going to be on the East Coast anyway. Jackson assuredly added, just don't do anything stupid like take a shot at the president. You know how they'll take that. For your own good you're going to want to reconsider if that's what you planned on. Do you really think I'd be that stupid? Naruto asked, crossing his arms and shaking his head in disbelief. All Jackson could muster in response was a sardonic, okay, so I'd pay $10 million for a decent swing at that piece of crap, but I wouldn't do that for this. Even though I could probably kidnap him. That wouldn't solve your little problem. It would just make it worse. Jackson said with a sarcastic tone. He's not really the one in control, remember. It's beyond him. That would be the equivalent of just kicking dirt on the Patriots' boots. Naruto looked down and grumbled, I know. Then, raising his blue eyes to Jackson once more, he asked, so can I go? The colonel gave a firm nod. Don't get caught, and if you have to die make sure your body can be recovered. And remember, if you get captured here you're not getting out, you'd better get ready for a trip to Guantanamo Bay. As he opened the door and exited the office, Naruto rolled his eyes sarcastically, good to know you've got so much faith in me. Tell me when a pilot's schedule frees up to take me where I need to go. I'm going to get my gear and get ready. Before Naruto completely closed the door, Jackson asked, you have a way out of whatever you're doing, don't you? Naruto responded, the whole country's going to be after your head if what you do is big. Don't worry about that, Naruto. I've got somewhere to run to until I get an opening to get back to the aircraft carrier, he said with a confident smile as he poked his head back through the small opening. XXX. A week later, in early August 2007, in New York City, Naruto is 20 years old. After arriving in New York, he was left to wait around without receiving any orders for a considerable amount of time. He struggled for days with the idea that he was being set up in some way, but he kept pushing those ideas aside, ready to go whenever Olga called, and observed how she treated her subordinates and those who supported her. But eventually, as he was just lounging in his hotel room, his codec went off, and he got a brief but direct message saying, it's time. At that point, he pretty much instantly got up and grabbed the few items he had brought with him to dance. After all was said and done, it was not as if he was going to stay or even return to that city. Olga quickly briefed him on her expectations for his waiting area. He hid under a camouflage sheet on the bank of the swollen Hudson River in the dead of night, hoping to be discovered by Olga, who said that night's only vessel that would come that way. A straightforward oil tanker known as the USS Discovery. It just so happened that his primary goals were to find her and board the ship without being discovered. Olga, I need more if I'm going to get on this thing. Where are you? He called her before the ship was even in sight. It seems that there were sentries on that ship, but he needed more information before boarding. Inbound. I'll be there myself soon enough. What, do you not think you can infiltrate it by yourself? You need me to hold your hand and get you on board? He knew that was a challenge in the form of a jab. They continued to strive to outdo each other in some manner even now, and even though he knew this, it still worked like a charm. He detested that woman so much, Cammy. Alright, not really. However, he would respond in that manner if someone asked him directly, and he had a good feeling that she would too. Naruto angrily retorted, oh, you're just so charming, aren't you? Fine, whatever, I'll get myself on there easily enough. What am I dealing with here? Clearly he wasn't dealing with ordinary sailors, as that would be far too simple. Honestly, you're U.S. Marines. Naruto hissed to himself, fuck. She was aware that this would occur beforehand. It's likely that Olga could have informed him of this prior to his initial agreement to travel to New York. Fine, all I have to do is avoid a firefight, right? You know, you could have told me this last week. We didn't know until yesterday. This did not sound like the kind of thing she would have done that for, so Naruto asked, we? With a questioning tone, who else is here? What, did you bring my crew? He took her statement that only he could help him to mean that there was no crew and he was flying alone. No such luck for you, Uzumaki. When I said, we, I meant myself, and my father's best men. I'm here for my own reasons, however. This isn't the problem of the others, but I do believe that I need your help. For now just get on the ship and hide yourself. You will know when I arrive. So what did she need him for if they were already here? Naruto could see a ship heading his way, and Olga said that there would only be one coming that way on this particular night. Fine, I guess I'll see you in a bit, he thought, wondering if he'd find out soon enough. Unnoticeable, Naruto shot from beneath his sheet of camouflage and raced across the dark river's surface, yelling, come on, faster, faster, faster. He leapt and stuck himself to the side of the ship as soon as he got to it, then he raced up the side of the hull, completely removing his camouflage sheet. Naruto kept running forward and upward even after reaching the ship's deck, his momentum refusing to be stopped. He dashed to the top of the bridge and up to the upper decks using his ability to maintain chakra. Eventually, Naruto found his way to the highest point the ship could offer, but he was still nowhere to be seen or heard. He could see where the ship was heading as he perched on top of the lookout, balancing on a point that was too high and narrow for anyone else to stand atop as easily as he did. Naruto donned an operational suit consisting of a deep, dark green color with black elbow and knee pads as well as gloves. Rather than having boots like Snake's sneaker suit, he was wearing the sandals he had grown accustomed to as a child. You could see the definition that years of rigorous physical conditioning and specialized training had given him, and it fit him rather snugly. Given that the material remained intact when he decided to pass a current through his body, his suit was also intended to function in tandem with his newly discovered capacity to control electricity from his body. He wore a black headband with a metal plate engraved with the Konoha symbol on his forehead, which no one else could truly understand, and he carried the HF blade ready on his back. He carried just one SOCOM pistol in a thigh holster, and he kept his extra pouches containing his special ninja tools, but he had something new to compensate for not having a backup gun. There was something resembling a gray conical structure around his right forearm, stopping at his wrist so his hand could be used normally. Naruto used the solar gun to create a unique addition for his specific sneaker suit after returning it for analysis. In order to fit with his suit and go around his forearm, the design was simplified. The weapon could now be powered by solar energy collected by Naruto's entire suit, and it could be used by cocking the weapon by sliding its conical design forward from its original location on the forearm. At that moment, Naruto felt his right forearm and right hand muscles tensing up, and he fired the weapon. As Naruto looked ahead, ensuring that everything he needed was in order, he noticed a suspension bridge that connected Manhattan and New Jersey across the Hudson River. Naruto descended to a crow's nest, sat in a contemplative pose, and just waited for Olga while the ship made ready to sail beneath the George Washington Bridge. He paid no attention to the rain that was falling outside. She would arrive in due course. XXX. The George Washington Bridge, August 8, 2007, at the Hudson River. We had received top-secret information that a new kind of Metal Gear was about to be transported. We had been out in the cold for too long, even though the whole thing smelled bad. A man in a poncho appeared to be the only crazy enough to be outside in that kind of weather as he calmly and demurely walked past the cars and towards the Manhattan side of the bridge in the rain. A cigarette sat in his mouth, the weather making it almost aesthetically pleasing in this case, before the man removed it from his lips and tossed it aside without a second's hesitation. He started running faster than anyone could keep up with all of a sudden, and then his poncho flew off and his body turned invisible with an electric shimmer that reminded him of the use of stealth camouflage. As he ran, his footsteps created tiny puddles that were all that was visible to the untrained eye, just like those of everyone else driving through the rainy streets. The man ran for a while before grunting and plunging over the side railing to start his swan dive off the bridge. This wasn't just a weird suicide attempt, thanks to a cord attached to him. It allowed him to level out and jump off the side of the ship he seemed to be diving onto. He broke free from his rope after bouncing off a ship wall once, and then fell the remaining distance to the aft deck. The sound of the ship's horn as it passed beneath the bridge masked the sound of the man landing on his feet with a crash and a crouch. He stomped down on the metal with such force that his stealth camouflage failed, revealing himself fully visible once more. After a moment, the man raised his head to the sky and revealed himself as Snake, with longer brown hair and a somewhat rough beard. He continued to wear the same suit he had worn to Shadow Moses, along with a black headband that he always tied around his forehead. XXX. With the storm raging right now, the Russian-made helicopter was steadily circling overhead, just out of sight and sound of the ship. Revolver Ocelot was sitting in the helicopter, observing the ship through a pair of binoculars while performing devious spins with a revolver in his other hand. He was saying to himself, "Our boy is right on schedule. He'll know soon enough." XXX. Aft deck, USS Discovery. Activating his codec, Snake arose from his crouched position and darted behind some debris on the deck. "This is Snake, do you read me, Otacon?" he said. "Loud and clear, Snake. I'm at the sneak point. The stealth camo's busted. Landing impact," Snake joked before turning serious. "We must have overused it. Sorry, but you're going to have to deal with it. You're not really in the military anymore." "All right," Snake replied, unconcerned about his missing gear. "I wasn't going to depend on this device anyhow." Regarding their quasi-mercenary status, Otakon remarked, the private sector's not so bad, is it? Guaranteed privacy and all that. In reference to Foxdie, Snake scowled at that and stated, I'm happy as long as no one gives me any more unwanted gifts. And I can't say that I miss the chattering nanny. His support system during Shadow Moses. Mei Ling's not so bad. Otakon argued, that reminds me, I need to get in touch with her again about that new Natick flashware. Snake let out a growl. Stop diverting toys from the SSCEN. U.S. Army Soldier Systems Center. Give her a message from me. Someone's going to find out sooner or later. She's better off assuming it's sooner and quitting while she's safe. Alright Snake, let's get to work. True enough, Otakon asked, prepared to start the mission's real briefing. You know how the technical specifications of Metal Gear were sold on the black market after Shadow Moses. Ocelot. Snake's tone betrayed his distaste for the animal. You would quickly grow tired of someone if you were repeatedly electrocuted while strapped to a metal table. Exactly. And now every state, group, and .com has its own version of Metal Gear. Snake remarked cynically, not exactly a classified weapon for today's nuclear powers. It used to be a tool for emphasizing control, a preventative measure to maintain order, and a last resort. All that remained was for various nations to construct, capable of devising their own methods to attempt replicating or enhancing what had already been attempted. This new one seems to have been designed to wipe the floor with all of the other models. The only consistent description that we could find was that it's an amphibious, anti-Metal Gear vehicle. That explains why it's under Marine Corps jurisdiction. The mission is to make visual confirmation of the new Metal Gear being transported by that tanker and bring back photographic evidence. But first I need you to go up to the top level of the infrastructure to the bridge. We need to find out where the ship is headed. A little reconnaissance, huh? There's still too much we don't know about this new prototype. Capabilities, deployment method, we don't even know how close it is to completion. If we know where the testing area is, I can start to draw some reasonable conclusions. With a general sense of readiness to start the celebration and leave, Snake said, okay, I'll head to the bridge A.S.A.P. Try to avoid a confrontation. Our job is to get evidence on Metal Gear development and expose it to the world. It would be best if you could get out of there without alerting anyone. He wondered who he was speaking to at this point. Since he was 23 years old, Snake had been surreptitiously entering and leaving hot zones. Not everyone who has spent 12 years practicing solo sneaking goes away in a matter of months saying, "Don't worry, I know the drill. We're not terrorists." Good. Don't forget that you're part of Philanthropy, an anti-Metal Gear organization that's officially recognized by the UN. Officially recognized, but still fringe. Otakon. Snake corrected the man providing his mission support running. While he was speaking and listening, Snake went to look at the only weapon he had brought for the task. A silenced M9 modified Beretta 92F FS handgun designed to fire knockout rounds. It wasn't really a question, as the deadpan tone of, "You brought cigarettes again," suggested. Snake defended, as though this was his go-to justification. It's a good luck charm. In all honesty, Snake could care less. You haven't read the Surgeon General's warning, have you? Since he was a teenager, he had been receiving negative feedback about his smoking. In fact, cigarettes had comforted him and saved his ass more times than he could remember. What now? Disregarding Otakon, Snake extracted a compact digital camera and initiated examining the ship's visible aspects from his vantage point. With their toting flashlights, he observed the posted Marines moving about without weapons, donning ponchos, and saying, "They don't look armed." Hey, Earth to Snake. These are nice, upstanding Marines, not terrorists. Don't get caught. We're in stealth mode here. Before changing the subject, Snake remarked, "Sure. And if it comes to it, a little beauty sleep never hurt anyone. By the way, Otakon, are you sure about this intelligence?" "Absolutely. Hacked it out of the Pentagon's classified files myself." Snake asked in a tone that left the answer ambiguous, "No traces." "Oh please. I'm too good for that. They'd done things like this repeatedly over the past 2 years since Shadow Moses, but Snake never felt bad before the way he felt now. But this might be a trap," Snake said, continuing to scan the decks he could see with the camera's zoom-in feature. "Remember that there's a price on our heads. You're just being paranoid," Snake uttered. "I hope so," not entirely convinced by Otacon's upbeat demeanor. He was the first person who would be hit by the shit if it started to rain, saying, "Those men, you wouldn't think they were anything but civilians from here." He was referring to the sentries who were supposed to be Marines. Putting uniformed Marines on the deck would be a bad idea. People can get a clear view of the boat from the riverside too. Snake observed the waves crashing around the ship and said, "The waterline's too high. This ship should have discharged its cargo upriver, according to the navigational plans. It's definitely in there, no doubt about it. The military trains you to watch for threats from the stern on a boat. That's SOP, standard operating procedure, for counter-terror ops too. Security should be tighter," Snake said in reference to the deck. "You worry too much." With a somewhat irritated expression, Snake questioned, "Where's the target?" Most likely a combination of his instincts and Otacon's attempt to dismiss it with a casual air, like it was nothing more than paranoia. It doesn't follow that someone isn't trying to harm you just because you're paranoid. Well, satellite surveillance is a major international pastime these days, so I'd say the cargo hold, safely below the deck. You can probably find more than a few entryways into the holds. For a moment Snake heard the faint sounds of a helicopter whirring overhead, then he looked back around the ship to see if any of the guards had heard it. He was shocked to see a man wearing a balaclava and orange and brown camouflage sneak up behind the guard as he fixed his attention on one of them. "What?" he asked himself. Sensing that there was another Marine behind him, the guard turned to engage, but because of his lack of weaponry and the element of surprise, he was quickly cut down rather horribly by the invader's knife, which was hidden from Snake's line of sight. And much of the same was occurring throughout the deck as these Marines were silently and covertly taken down by these unidentified assailants. As the new arrivals disposed of the bodies left over from their slaughter over the ship's sides, Snake reported to Otacon, "Looks like we're not the only ones after Metal Gear tonight." He wondered aloud, "What's their game, hijack?" As he watched them all take out their real firearms, AKS-74Us, to begin patrolling and heading inside the ship itself to take it over. "Otacon, how many men would someone need to take over a ship of this size?" Snake said to Otacon. "The ship is run by a computer, so I'd say about 18 people." Snake looked around more, noticing a man on a higher deck. His size was considerable, and his distinctive brown jacket stood out from the other men's outfits. He had to be the one in charge. He was an older, physically intimidating man with a mustache and a haircut akin to a gray box. "Russians?" Snake asked, sounding almost incredulous. For them, this was a bit of a detour, wasn't it? "You sure?" Snake confidently stated. No Marine barber touched that head of hair. Based on the weapons the men were carrying and the way their commander was looking, he was pretty sure of his guess. And when he saw the man shield his head from the rain by donning a woolen Russian-style cap emblazoned with a military emblem, he knew his suspicions had been validated. With his camera up, Snake took a picture and said, "I'm sending you a photo. Let's get an ID on him ASAP." Then, getting ready to move, he said, "Either way it looks like the ship is theirs now. We need to get a fix on who they are. Listen, Snake, all we need is photographic evidence of Metal Gear. As long as we have that we can put it online and blow the whole thing wide open, so no pyrotechnics, all right?" With a rolling of his eyes, Snake realized he had to retract his earlier claim that there were no nannies left to watch him. "Okay, I'll try my best. This isn't like Shadow Moses. Reach me if anything happens. I'll be waiting just past the Verrazano Bridge. You need to be off of that ship by then. I'll be in touch." That concluded the conversation, and Snake scuttled off to start his mission, first making his way to the ship's bridge to obtain the intended coordinates of the craft. XXX. Navigation deck. Naruto included. Olga did nothing more than stand around the front of the upper deck after supervising her share of the Gurlukovich mercenaries' takeover of the USS Discovery. She had been pacing restlessly and told her father's men that she would prefer to be left alone, save for the most urgent matters that they were unable to bring to her father. If he ever made an appearance, that would be a safe place for a conversation. "Where on earth is Uzumaki?" Olga paced around, wondering to herself. Like the other mercenaries on the ship, she was dressed in fatigues and a military cap that were both camouflaged in the same way. Her outfit consisted of tight black and white striped t-shirt, brown gloves, and suspenders over her shoulders to keep the rather baggy shirt from riding up over her hips. With a frown twisted on her face and her hair still very short, she said, "He should have beaten us on board." Guess who? Olga tensed up at the sound of the voice, but that was the only surprise-induced reaction she displayed. She would not grant the bastard the satisfaction he deserved. She wanted to stab him, but the cheeky bastard had done the same thing when they had last met, even when he put his arms around her waist and lifted her up from behind. Was it his clone that made that attempt? In any case, since it was against his instructions, he was essentially acting on his own initiative. Olga calmly said, "You have 5 seconds to let go of me or I'll throw you into the Hudson," missing some very important equipment as well. Naruto quickly released her. "That's what I thought," Olga replied, feeling somewhat satisfied as she could feel how far away he backed. Naruto stood in front of Olga for the first time in nearly a year and said, 5 seconds, last time you gave the clone 3. He grinned and suggested, "Maybe because you knew it was actually me you let me get my hug in for an extra 2 seconds. You still wish you could just fight me again and be done with it, don't you?" She asked with a scowl that belied her still amazing beauty. Olga crossed her arms over her chest and said, "Every time I hear your voice, you have no idea." She added, "I hope you've picked up some new tricks because you're going to need them this time." "Well, you called me, and you were really vague about what you want me to do. I want to help, but you're going to need to clue me in. Why couldn't you just tell me what you wanted over the codec?" Olga said as she moved next to Naruto, who was leaning against the upper deck railing and waiting. Olga said, looking down at the ground with her arms crossed, "I needed to confirm what I thought I needed you for. Do you know what is on this ship?" Naruto shot her a cold stare, which she returned with a similar expression. "Right, well, to put it short terms, it's a Metal Gear. The one you got Wolf to point out to me in Japan last year was a piece of crap. Rex was 10 times scarier than that thing," Naruto replied, "as this one as much of an eyesore as that one was." Olga scowled in response to his query. At minimum, he could have said, "I wouldn't know since I never saw Rex or the one you speak of. But my father seems to believe that this one is superior to the Metal Gear Rex model." Grasping his wet hair from the continuous rain, Naruto asked himself, why does he think this one's the holy grail of Metal Gears? It could be just as useless as the one you sent me after in Japan. Because he told my father that this one was the design that would make up for the loss of Rex 2 years ago, Olga said, her expression changing from a frown to an obvious glower. Olga nodded stiffly. "That's the greatest idea I've ever heard." Naruto's eyes widened because he knew of only one person that Olga detested enough to change her tone. "Wait, Ocelot is here. He's the reason all of these groups can get their hands on Metal Gear designs in the first place. And he got your dad all fired up to steal this one?" Oluto asked. Olga's voice was filled with disbelief. What? Did Naruto truly give Ocelot a compliment for something? Think about it. Naruto prodded her with his elbow. He sold the plans on the black market and made enough money to buy himself a damn decent-sized country, and now he's about to get your old man to take the pick of the litter, the next step up from REX. He's getting his hands on an upgrade without ever putting in a hint of research or development money. Olga cut off her argument when Naruto put a hand on her shoulder. "I need you to destroy it," Olga said sharply before he could go off on any more digressions, as he appeared ready to launch into a long-winded one. "Destroy the prototype so that it stays out of my father's hands. Shalashasta. I don't trust him, and I have a terrible feeling, but all my father sees is his chance to get Metal Gear so that Russia can rise to power once more. He sees him as a comrade in his cause, but I do not. All you had to do was just say, Ocelot, and I wouldn't have asked you any other questions." Naruto looked at her with a calm expression. "I still want my answers from him too. And if this Metal Gear is bigger and badder than Rex, then I guess I can't let it get mass-produced, so don't worry your pretty little head." Olga begged him, "Please don't kill any of the men, or my father." There she went, using the word, please, once more. Hearing her final request, Naruto sighed. If I didn't love you so much, he muttered, purposefully speaking loud enough to make her squirm. Your dad hates Americans and has a grudge against me because I killed Liquid Snake and helped botch the Shadow Moses rebellion. I wasn't planning on running into him anyway, but fine, I won't kill anyone, little Miss Sentimental, Olga said, giving him a hard punch to the shoulder that put a smile back on his face. Olga rolled her eyes, scoffing at his intended joke. Excuse me for wishing my father to see the birth of his Granch. But before she could finish her sentence, she realized what she had been saying and that this was definitely not something she wanted Naruto to hear. Before her casual remark truly had time to register, Naruto observed, someone's thinking pretty far ahead. How come she would even mention that unless she? No way, you're actually, just, no way, that's, he said, seeming to stare a hole in Olga with his head jerking towards her right away. Olga growled at him and pulled the brim of her cap down, trying to hide the red that was starting to show on her cheeks from being discovered by such a moron. Don't say a word. She made his own team swear to keep their mouths shut because she didn't want to hear what he had to say. All she needed was for him to know. I didn't think you'd have a baby, Olga, at least not this soon. You're like 22, aren't you? Naruto blinked in bewilderment before adding, wait, why the hell are you here then? With a smile on his face. That's adorable. Naruto was surprised when Olga, with a hint of venom in her tone, said, I'm 3 months along, I can still function just fine. What do you care anyway? As she walked off the rail she had been leaning against. What do I care? Naruto asked, cocking an eyebrow. We're friends, Olga. She turned her back on him and walked away, seemingly uninterested, saying, you're actually like my best friend. I think he would have found that offensive 7 years ago, but it didn't seem offensive at all now. But she attempted to interrupt, saying, this isn't the place or the time for this. Then when? Replied Naruto. We haven't seen each other in person since the Curl Islands thing. You don't even talk to me anymore, you make the others relay anything you want to say. You've been like this ever since I left. You're the only person outside of my team that I can trust in. Do you really trust me, Uzumaki? Olga asked tersely, interrupting him. I told you years ago that friends and enemies change in a heartbeat. You learned that not too long after I said it when Foxhound tried to finish you off. In an attempt to make her turn to face him, Naruto also pushed himself off the railing and leapt straight over her. But she simply turned away, saying, I want you as my friend. I don't see why we'd go back to being enemies now. Then why did you just leave? Olga said quietly, do you know that I was about to do whatever I could to get you a place in my father's unit? If we had gotten rid of Shalashaska in Leon, I could have gotten you in with my father in less than 4 months. And when you wound up working for these patriots that you claimed have your balls in a vice, why didn't you come to me then? We could have gotten your sister out no matter who they are. You could be free right now. She turned to face him with a furious expression on her face. So how could you say that you trust me when you didn't trust me enough to ask me for help? So that's why, once he returned to America, she began to distance herself from him. Although he believed they were close friends, their relationship turned into a professional one once he returned to work for the Patriots. He said, this runs deep, Olga, deeper than I even still know. How could I ask you to stick your neck out like that? I had already asked you to do me a huge favor after Shadow Moses. By asking me to take in a group of soldiers that include Sniper Wolf, the greatest sniper in the world, as if such a thing would be a hindrance to me. Meryl is a wonderful soldier, and Johnny is if nothing else trustworthy. Olga responded with conviction, that was not a favor that I did you, I took away the only people in the world that actually wanted to watch your back and bolstered my unit's forces with their presence. That is not a favor. You did me a favor. All that ever happens is you doing me favors, and I've never helped you, not once. So how can you say I'm your best friend? All they could hear was the sound of the storm, and silence stood between them. Finally, Naruto spoke up and said, Olga Gerlukovich, you are my best friend. Deal with it. He spoke his next words clearly and with complete belief in what he was saying. Because I want you to be. Because you're amazing. Because I like the person that you are, not because I think you can do things for me. Olga punched him in the face right away, and he didn't even try to dodge or block it. He just took a few steps back, staggered off, and took the hook on the cheek. The fact that she could hit him hard enough to move him actually surprised him. She had undoubtedly been practicing her combat skills so that, if she could defeat him in a single blow, she could defeat him in combat someday. Naruto didn't even react to being decked, other than to rub the quickly disappearing bruise on his cheek. The Russian woman's scowl disappeared when she realized what she had done. It was incredibly embarrassing to have struck Naruto, as there had been no justification for doing so. "So, I'm your closest friend, am I?" "Yes," Naruto replied, his tone remaining neutral despite being struck. "I'll just call that a hormonal outburst and that's it," he said. "I hate you." Naruto stepped forward and placed both of his hands on her shoulders, saying, "I know, you're still my best friend though. And as your best friend, I will always have your back. So where's the stupid Metal Gear I'm here to turn into a flaming wreck like I did to Rex?" Olga smiled slightly and pointed straight down, saying, "Stowed away below deck, deep within the cargo hold." She also said, "And don't die, Uzumaki. I'm the only person that gets to kill you, always remember that." He saw the amused look on her face when he apparently named himself the uncle. "If you think you're having a kid and I'm not the godfather, then you're out of your mind." "So who's the dad? Does he hate me too?" Naruto said, tilting his neck to the side, eliciting a crack. "Maybe when your kid is born and grows up you can train them to kill me too. Turn it into a whole family affair. Yeah, teach your baby to stab Uncle Naruto right in the heart because otherwise I won't even come close to dying." Olga smirked and said, "The dad is an asshole, and yes he does. Because you screwed up Foxhound's rebellion, most of my father's men hate you, except for the ones that are more so under my command." If Olga was being completely honest, she had to admit that she missed having in-person banter with Naruto. Naruto began to circle her while saying, "Well, he has a good reason, I guess. Maybe he's worried that I'll steal you away. Like I keep telling you, scar or not, you were always really cute." With a ghost of a smile, Olga said dryly, "The father is a non-factor, not needed nor wanted, so you won't ever be seeing him." Sadly, as choppers sounded out around the ship, the banter was about to end. More Gurlukovich mercenaries started climbing down to the lower decks on both sides of the ship. Naruto ducked out of the way of the helicopter's line of sight as soon as he noticed them in order to stay hidden. Olga's radio went off and she picked it up to talk to whoever was calling. Yes. She didn't even notice him disappear because her focus was drawn to the helicopters, so she couldn't tell where he had gone. "Shalashashka has landed." Olga narrowed her eyes at hearing her father give her an update on the mission's status. Once the talk was over, she would find a way to bring Naruto back to her from wherever he had fled to avoid the helicopters and tell him everything. "I'm on my way to the tanker holds. Report your status. Control room, communications and engine room are under control." Olga responded with diligence, all entry and exit points to the tanker holds secured. Infrared sensors placed and operational. "Good work. Are the explosives in place?" Olga said as she strolled around the front of the navigation deck. "Yes, they are all planted." Up front, there was a lot of haphazard clutter. Tarp-covered materials, several crates, metal shelves, bright lights facing the rest of the ship, and a variety of other items. "Listen, once we have what we came for, the tanker will be scuttled." Olga questioned, "And the vehicle's pilot? Who was going to drive the ship away if it was to be abandoned once the Metal Gear was obtained?" "He's the only one who's undergone the VR training. No one else can do it." Olga was slightly alarmed when her father mentioned him, as she knew exactly who he was referring to. "Are you sure you can trust him?" she asked. "Your part in the mission is complete. You were to leave at once." She was leaving like crazy until she found out that Naruto had gotten away with stealing the new Metal Gear and, if he felt like it, maybe even Ocelot's life. It would even be appropriate to capture and abduct the man in this instance, she countered. "No, it's not over yet. I can see the moon, even in this storm. Pale as death. I have a bad feeling about this mission. You swore this to me. You said that you would leave the unit once the mission was complete. Do not worry, this is a country of liberty. Olga responded, "No, that was never going to work with her. This is where I belong, with the unit. I have nowhere else to go." She looked at her SOCOM pistol for a moment before saying, "Father, I want to stay and fight." "There is no choice to make here, Olga. Need I remind you that you are carrying my grandchild?" When the subject came up, Olga did not even say a word, just holstered her gun and put her hand on her stomach. "You will be on the helicopter out of here, now." "Damn it," Olga exclaimed as the radio went silent and she held it up without saying anything before letting it drop to her side. She was clearly waiting for the one helicopter that was still near the ship to descend or drop a line so she could board in accordance with her father's instructions. Olga just waved it off, refusing to get on board. Additionally, she was unable to get Naruto to return outside so she could talk to him as long as it lingered like an annoying babysitter. "Freeze!" She heard an unfamiliar, harsh voice command her from behind. And now she believed the ship was safely docked. Olga thought to herself, "Great, there's someone else other than Uzumaki that can get the drop on me," if Naruto had been sneaking up on her once more. XXX. At one time with Snake the bridge, Snake had mostly avoided the Russian invaders who had taken over the USS Discovery by creeping around its upper decks. They were dispersed everywhere. Not a single spot on board appeared to have escaped their attention. That was demonstrated by the dead bodies of the overpowered Marines that he frequently discovered in his path. Additionally, Snake noticed that there appeared to be the largest number of unfortunate Marines on the bridge itself when he noticed 6 bodies on the ground, their bloody wounds recently spilled. Still, there was nothing he could do about that. Starting a one-man battle on a tanker in the middle of the river with nothing more than a tranquilizer pistol wasn't a smart idea when he had his own problems to deal with. In this case, his greatest tool would be discretion. So he carried out his mission as before. After locating the navigational computer, which Otakon had previously designated as an objective, Snake reported, "I'm looking at where the ship is headed right now." He then turned on his codec and found the ship's coordinates. 35 degrees longitude, latitude around 58. More than 500 miles off the coast of the Bermudas, out in the middle of the Atlantic. That means the prototype is ready for solo testing. It's basically combat-worthy. That area is outside of the Second Fleet's operational range too. This must be a standalone Marine Corps project, which means this prototype Metal Gear must be designed for independent deployment, without any naval assistance. Otakon then realized that with the fresh details he received he had begun to ramble. Anyway, analysis can wait until later. Snake, you need to go down to the holds and locate the actual metal. A bump or thump of some sort on the metal roof of the bridge caused Snake to lose focus. This pulled his gaze to the front windows, where he saw a woman pacing around outside in the rain, appearing to be talking on the radio. Pulling out his pistol, he crept outside as she was distracted by a heated discussion, turning her back on him. From his perspective, that was ideal. This gave Snake the opportunity to ambush her, but she ended the call and turned on her radio before he could hold her directly at gunpoint. Given that this was his only opportunity and that any attempt to approach might cause her to become suspicious, Snake seized the moment, saying, "Freeze," and stopping short of approaching her while brandishing the gun. "Hands over your head, now." Olga followed instructions, turning her back to Snake while keeping her face hidden under her hat and raising her gun to demonstrate that she didn't have another weapon on her person. Snake said, "Toss your gun overboard." Slowly, before giving a low growl, he slipped around to the front of Olga as she obeyed his orders, asking, "A woman. Show your face." Olga, calmly removing the hat from her head, voiced, "You men really are all the same." She was a little miffed that her one and only shield from the unbearable rain was no longer there. "Who are you?" Snake asked, keeping his gun poised to shoot her instantly if she made any funny moves. Olga casually waved her hat away from her grasp as it blew away in the storm, saying, "We are nomads. Wanderers." Olga tried to take a step when she noticed Snake's gaze briefly straying from the misplaced accessory, but he noticed movement in her muscles. "I said don't move," Snake angrily exclaimed. Olga laughed and shook her head. "Americans, so you shoot women too?" She was aware from personal experience that an American would shoot her, but Naruto insisted on being non-American on several occasions. At her attempt to provoke him or poke fun at his chivalry, Snake smirked and said, "I'm a nomad too." He heard Olga laugh quietly and noticed something else. "What else do you have there? Take the knife and toss it." Snake could have noticed Olga's sparkle when he told her to do that if the weather hadn't been so stormy. With one hand still raised, she slowly reached for the knife at her waist and drew. She took it out, showed it to Snake, then knelt to place it on the ground. Olga rolled her eyes and straightened back up where she had been before. Snake said, "Not there. Hold that position. Now turn around." Olga stopped her before it touched the ground. Right before the rather fierce storm winds picked up and threw the ship to one side, jolting Snake off balance but allowing him to quickly recover, Olga said, "Someone seems to know what they're doing." Snake regained his position and kept his gun trained on her, but she had all the time she needed to make her move. "Not too shabby, is it? New York, I mean?" she asked, as the storm seemed to stop with that wind, leaving the summer night clear. With a simple flip of the knife, Olga held the blade in her hand and spun quickly before aiming the handle squarely at Snake. A bullet shot from below whizzed past Snake's head, narrowly missing it. Olga was able to pull her second hidden gun from the back of her pants and take cover before the man could fire back at her because of his sudden motion. With a clang, Olga's used knife fell to the ground, and Snake returned to his ready position. Olga freed herself and said rather brazenly, "And that brings our tour to its conclusion." In an attempt to ascertain who was responsible for the assault that had been staged on the ship, Snake asked inquisitively, Scout Knife with a surprise. "Are you Spetsnaz?" He was still a little shaken up from nearly being taken down by a sneak attack that happened right in front of his face. "I think you deserve some credit. No one's ever dodged that shot of mine, but your score is still lower than his. You didn't hit me back the way he did," Olga said, tracing the faint scar on her face, the only relic from her first battle with Naruto. "But no one gets lucky twice either," she added. Then, she rushed from behind her cover and quickly fired at the peeking head of Snake, missing him as he slipped back behind cover. Snake shifted to retaliate, but Olga had already sprang back behind a pile of crates for her own cover. "Yeah, I'm really going to hit her at this rate," thought the grizzled old soldier, his weapon firing slowly even for a semi-automatic pistol. Olga said, crouching as a retaliatory shot bounced off her cover, "Whoever you aren't stopping us." At that moment, the storm lifted the tarp from the building, exposing another set of shelves and directing the bright lights in Snake's direction. Olga fired at one of the lights to make it shine directly in Snake's line of sight, giving her an even greater advantage. This cunning move was motivated by her memory of fighting Naruto in the past and how he used the battlefield as a weapon. At that point, the intense light from Olga's gunfire nearly burned Snake's pupils out of his head, so he averted his eyes and dove behind cover once more. "Well, someone knows how to fight using the elements," he said, hopping his head over a crate and ducking down again to avoid more gunfire. "To hell with this," he said, quickly remembering where the lights were, so he leapt up and took out the spotlights with 2 shots to level the playing field, so to speak. Olga exclaimed, removing a grenade and hurling it in Snake's direction. "Really now?" she asked. He dove for cover as soon as he saw the grenade land, and Olga fired at him, missing him completely when the grenade exploded, grazing his calf. After taking a dive, Snake rolled back to his feet and shot Olga, hitting her in the shoulder with a tranquilizer dart. "He's not trying to kill me," Olga exclaimed, taking a sharp breath at the projectile protruding from her body. Her gun was much better than his. If he had anything different, he would have switched it out by now. Instead, it seems more like he has no other weapons. Her movements seemed to slow down, but even so, she could still feel the tranquilizer starting to take effect. A little disoriented, Olga tried to shoot Snake as he hid behind a crate and behind a shelf stocked with gear. Even though it was his only weapon, it worked quite well to wear her down so that when she attempted to hide again, he could shoot her again. Snake decided not to hide again this time, not wanting to play cat and mouse with her now that the shoe was on the other foot, and ready to shoot again to put her to sleep. She began leaning against the railing to keep herself upright, but before 3 light-based bullets could strike him, a glow from behind him triggered a warning to move out of the way. When the shot stopped, Snake rolled back to his feet and looked in the direction they had come from, but he saw nothing. He turned back to face Olga and noticed that someone was clinging to her bridal style. It was a man dressed in full Gerlukovich mercenary uniform, minus the repelling harness, the AKS-74U, and gloves. The masked man whispered to Olga, whose eyes were fluttering open and shut as if she was fighting to stay awake, "Do you always get into trouble like this when I'm in the area? You're just bad luck for everyone, aren't you, Uzumaki?" The sleepy woman said softly, dropping her gun and closing her eyes completely. "Shilashaka is here," was the last thing she was able to say before passing out despite her best efforts to stay awake. A smile appeared on her face as she recognized the voice of the person who was holding onto her. The disguised Naruto just stared at her, but when he saw that the darts in her arm and the back of her neck were only making her sleep, he sighed with relief. He removed the darts and threw them away. In particular, after witnessing the man wearing the Gerlukovich mercenary uniform assist Olga, Snake adopted the motto, "Shoot first, ask questions later." He shot, but to his surprise, the man simply took the dart in the back without moving. Feeling the shot, Naruto straightened up, keeping Olga in his arms. He turned to face Snake, and the veteran warrior's severe return glare was met by the stare of rather cold blue eyes. Why hasn't this guy already fallen? Because of Naruto's disguise, Snake was unable to identify him, so he thought, "I know I didn't hit him anywhere vital, but it's been 10 seconds. By now, something ought to have happened. I don't have another weapon that can take him out if these don't work." I go inside, find unconscious Gerlukovich mercs, steal a uniform from one of them so I can talk to Olga in peace about the fact that some of her men are unconscious, and I find this guy putting her to sleep. Naruto thought to himself, okay, someone's about to take an ass kicking. Snake had changed quite a bit since the last time Naruto had seen him. In addition to his appearance, he was also, slightly, upset about Olga falling. Snake yelled, "Who are you?" At this point, aware that he would also have to battle this man. He could at least learn more about the man he was going to shoot. "I am not going to waste all of my solar gun shots on this guy," Naruto concluded as he considered his opening maneuver. Do tranquilizer darts interfere with pregnancies? Naruto thought as Snake fired another shot from his tranquilizer Beretta, and he turned to take the dart on his arm rather than risk having it strike Olga once more. However, she was only struck by 2. Who is this guy? Just before Naruto charged at him, Snake pondered. Snake dipped away, but Naruto wasn't attempting to harm him. Rather, he was attempting to get past him so Olga could cross the bridge. It's clear that he supports these Russian soldiers, but who the hell are they? The Naruto asked. As Naruto strode back outside into the rain, he appeared indifferent to the fact that a gun was being pointed in his direction at all. He kept his gun ready. Naruto was hit by 3 more shots that lodged in his chest, and he did not attempt to parry any of them. After removing the darts and wiping his hand down his chest, Naruto gave Snake a, "Are you serious?" look from behind the balaclava before charging straight at him. Before Snake could conceal the weapon and get ready to fight, Naruto's hand was on top of the gun. Naruto made a quick elbow move to push the gun's barrel away from him, causing Snake's desperate strike to miss. Naruto delivered a follow-through spinning elbow that struck home, sending Snake reeling back against the railing. Fortunately, he managed to hold onto his gun despite the fact that it was already evident that this man was unconquerable. With an axe kick that Snake managed to avoid, Naruto leapt through the air, crashing his heel against the metal railing and destroying it with sheer force. Snake swept Naruto's grounded foot out from under him and tucked his gun away. The ever-sharp ex-shinobi took this as no more than a minor inconvenience, handspringing through with one arm to get back up on his feet. The upright Naruto blocked a higher kick from a mostly grounded Snake, and in return, the downed Snake kicked Naruto across his back, sending him sliding across the wet navigation deck before his body stopped and collided with a crate. Without missing a beat, Snake leapt back up to his feet, ready to fight again. "Regular grunts don't fight like that," Naruto said, pretending to stumble and watching Snake respond. Naruto changed course mid-step and approached Snake from a different angle than he had anticipated, grinning beneath the mask. "And they're definitely not that fast," Snake exclaimed. Snake was sent reeling over the crate that had helped him get back up so quickly, as stars of pain flashed in his eyes as the swift Naruto delivered a vicious punch directly to his face. There was no such thing as a fair fight on the battlefield, and Naruto pushed the crate forward with a push kick, striking Snake in the face as he began to stand up. Snake fell on top of his head but rolled through. Since the beginning of the fight, I have not once gone on the attack. Snake was about to stumble when his opponent leapt onto the crate he had just kicked, ready to throw another punch at him. Though he could feel the bones in his hand screaming in protest of the move, Snake was prepared for it and braced himself to catch the punch. That hurt even with the sneaking suit increasing all of my body mechanics. He exclaimed, "Diamond, what's he made of?" Now, at least, the bastard was positioned to hinder him. With Snake's free hand, Naruto took a kick to the body that caused him to grunt, a fist to the stomach, and a backhand punch to the face. Snake still had him under control, but he was going to pay a price for it. Naruto formed a half-ram seal with his free hand and collected his chakra for a nasty surprise. When Naruto made that strange hand motion, electricity shot through Snake's body. His muscles spasmed from the shock he had received, causing him to yell incoherently. He then involuntarily let Naruto go, seeing electricity radiating from Naruto's body. Strange abilities and vicious, quick-witted hand-to-hand combat seemed all too familiar. With more chakra building up in his left hand, Naruto was able to use Snake's temporary incapacitation to end the fight once and for all. He raised the well-known blue chakra orb and said, "Rasengan, spiraling sphere." As it started to spin quickly in his hand. Even with Naruto's startling defense move, Snake's specialized suit lessened the damage he took. However, when he heard the next attack's cry and saw the same attack from 2 years ago, he instantly recognized it as Naruto. And scrambled back as hard as he could to prevent the Rasengan from slamming into his chest. He didn't want to witness what that attack could do to him directly because he had already seen what it could do to machinery. Naruto became uncomfortable when he heard someone he had never met mention his name. He had worked extremely hard over the previous 2 years to ensure that no one in the field could identify him by name, and this man appeared to know him. "You know me?" the man asked. Though he was still a little defensive, Snake could tell that Naruto was open to listening. "Yeah kid, it's me Snake. Long time, no see huh?" Snake said. Though Naruto's eyes grew wide, he started examining Snake's appearance closely. Snake was there, but he didn't look the same as he did the last time. He was an older man, indicating that smoking had probably caused him to age rapidly. "Snake, what happened to you? You look like you need a long nap," the person asked. "We can't all be bursting with youthful exuberance now, can we kid?" Snake replied. Now that the only reason he had planned to wear his disguise was officially a non-factor, Naruto sighed and discarded his sodden balaclava. With his sword and other supplies once again visible, he returned to his own dark green sneaker suit and said, "Rasengan was a dead giveaway huh? Yo, nice to see you again, I guess. Why are you here? Why are you here? Don't play around here kid. I know it was you that took down the Metal Gear in Japan. So are you here because you hunt the Metal Gear derivatives too?" Naruto shook his head. "Then why are you here?" Snake growled impatiently. With a slight smile on his face, Naruto said, "It's complicated. I'm here because someone that I care about very much asked for my help. That's all." Surprising Snake, who had seemed to have grown since their previous meeting, Naruto leapt over him and landed on the bridge's roof. "So here's the drill solid Snake, we're not really enemies, but we don't really want the same thing here either. Stay out of my way and I'll stay out of yours. Everyone's happy and nobody goes home in a pine box." With that necessary statement made, Naruto leapt off the bridge and across the deck railing to a lower level. Snake leapt over the railing that Naruto had leapt over with apparent ease. Was he insane, or was he just foolish to fall that far? He turned to face the bridge where he could no longer see Olga's unconscious body inside, and then he remembered one of Naruto's other little tricks, the duplication move. But when he looked, he saw no trace whatsoever of Naruto or which way he might have gone. "I hate ninjas." He then put his hand to his ear to contact Otakon. "Otakon, we've got another little wrinkle here." He continued to where Olga dropped her gun and took it for himself. Otakon's voice interrupted Snake's codec, asking, "You saw him?" In shock, "He's here and you actually fought with him for a bit." Naruto Uzumaki, The same guy from Shadow Moses. Yes, Snake responded, still attempting to get over the feeling of electricity coursing through his body. Apparently, Liquid stepping up his game after getting kicked in his little piss pump off of a scaffold 2 years ago made him really not want to lose a fistfight again. The electricity was definitely a novel experience. Was it the outfit that covered him while he pretended to be a hired gun? Since he was blind to the fact that it conducted electricity. What's he doing here? Is he here to expose the new Metal Gear 2? Or is he here to destroy it? Still standing outside in the rain, Snake wiped the water from his face and said, "I don't know." He said he was here to help someone close to him and that we weren't really enemies. Then he told me to stay out of his way and he jumped off of the navigational deck. He what? That fall is like a more bad news. The girl is gone. The Olga woman that I just fought, he put her inside the bridge beforehand and she's gone now. I got her gun though. USP. It's in really good condition. Snake continued, cutting off his support team member. I know how high it is. Even though Naruto is capable of dodging tranquilizer darts from the M9, he would undoubtedly flinch at the sight of a bullet. Crawl helplessly to the ground. That is, if they had to fight once more. I know who they are, the group of mercenaries that have taken the ship. We've ID'd the old man as Sergei Gerlukovich. And they want Metal Gear, said the man Ocelot was meant to meet with following the resolution of the Shadow Moses incident, if that had not gone to hell for Foxhound. One of Ocelot's allies. Everything has changed. This isn't going to be as simple as we thought. That much was clear. Snake had more work ahead of him. However, a low hum reached his ears before he could start moving down to the hold where the new Metal Gear was located. When he raised his head and looked around, he saw a white hovering object with a camera staring down at him before taking off quickly. Even though it hadn't been moving as quickly as it had, Snake couldn't try to shoot at it because there were no bullets in his real gun. As a result, it was able to escape with ease, saying, "A cipher, fuck. We're under surveillance, and it's not by the Marines either, it's the Army. Russians, Marines, Army, and whatever the hell Naruto Uzumaki was. What a get-together. Snake, I have a confession to make. We didn't dig up the information on this new Metal Gear on our own. Not like usual," Otacon said, going silent, but the codec didn't go off to indicate that the conversation was over. That didn't sound good either. Snake asked, his tone a little acerbic. How did you find out then? It was clear that Otacon wasn't someone Snake trusted if he didn't feel like discussing it beforehand. It was an anonymous tip. You've never trusted those, why would you start now? Yes, Otacon, that's what a step sibling is. There was no need for him to explain that to Snake. I only knew her for 2 years. I have a younger sister, a stepsister. We have different parents. So what? You've never mentioned her before. Why does it matter now? Snake asked out loud. The sender of the tip was EE. Her name was Emma, but I always called her EE. It just caught my eye, you know. I thought it was just a coincidence, but I couldn't get it out of my mind. There's no one out there who really knows about her. Otacon, stop beating your heart. Well, he couldn't hold him responsible for his disposition. In the same way that Snake was a product of his environment, so was he. When was the last time you saw her? Was all he could do to try and connect with his partner. Over 10 years ago. It could be a trap to lure us out here. I don't know. After I got the tip, I broke into the Pentagon's system to get confirmation. Watch your back though, Snake. Maybe I screwed up. Well, it had been far too long since they'd experienced something strange, so perhaps they were overdue for a major freakout. What better time to rectify Snake's perception that the world was against him than now, after 2 years? As he started to head back inside the bridge to try making his way down to the ship's hold in order to find the new Metal Gear that the Marines had designed, Snake reassured Otacon, saying, "I'll be careful." XXX includes tanker interior from Naruto. It wasn't too difficult to descend from the navigational deck. All he had to do to get through the ship was subdue a couple. Even though all he had to get around the ship was a tranquilizer gun, Snake had been pretty thorough in clearing the corridors of guards en route to the bridge. And speaking of which, Naruto was sleepy after those foolish things. How many hits did he receive? But he encountered a bit of a roadblock when he attempted to descend to the lowest levels. He actually detested the obvious traps that people would frequently lay. For his tastes, they were usually a bit too destructive. Naruto mumbled, "Oh my kami," as he knelt before a row of lasers attached to a mass of semtex that stretched from one side of a hallway to the other. Every explosive setup had a control panel installed on it. Damn it, Olga, were you going to blow the whole damn ship sky high after your dad got the Metal Gear out of here? He felt like palming his face in disgust at what he was seeing. All right, once he told Colonel Jackson about the ridiculous amounts of semtex he had discovered throughout the ship, he could formally return to the man and claim to have successfully completed his terrorist mission. Saying he planted it and threatened them would have been sufficient. When Johnny needed him, where was he? If he were there, he'd have him defusing that crap all day. He was more of an explosives creator than a stopper, so he wasn't about to touch it with a 10-foot pole. By chance, if he attempted to touch it, the entire ship would ascend prematurely, resulting in their deaths in a huge fireball in the Hudson. That was the last thing he wanted to occur. Because the Gurlukovich mercenaries had taken control of the ship, he was unable to kill any Marines. Not that he had seen any, and he was also unable to kill any of the mercenaries because Olga had made a request. Not only that, but before Sergei had the audacity to go for it and take it, he had to wait around on that ship until he discovered a way to take down the Metal Gear. Okay, so he couldn't just lounge around the top decks of the ship, he needed to find the real reason for the season, as it were. He had to descend to that enormous bipedal tank of death and figure out how to blow it up without taking everyone with him in the enormous explosion that would have to occur in order to destroy the damned weapon. To pass through, though, he had to first get past the flurry of lasers that would activate the semtex. Naruto attempted to shape his chakra in the proper way by creating 3 sets of hand seals. He balled his hand into a fist and sent the electricity shooting through it, sending one finger soaring with the force. To steady his hand, he calmed himself for a few breaths. To knock the control panels out of alignment, he needed to hit them with precise control and aim. By doing this, he would be able to pass freely and the motion-detecting lasers would be reset. Hopefully he'd refined his control enough to be able to use it as a basic burst attack. He was spitting out random shocks like a Tesla coil the last time he attempted to use electricity even vaguely precisely. Even with simple directives, it was totally unpredictable and uncontrollable. Remembering the last time he attempted to shoot electricity, Naruto allowed his chakra to stop flowing and instead focused on the solar gun. Putting aside the fact that he was indoors and without sunlight to refuel during a downpour, he had to make his shots matter. Hopefully, the light projectile's blunt damage wouldn't result in an explosion from the volatile semtex if he missed with them. The laser field collapsed after 3 precisely timed, barely charged shots. Since he had to use his entire arm to control the special weapon, having it integrated into his suit undoubtedly helped with the control and recoil aspect. He walked over to the door and started to open it, sighing to himself. Olga was truly insane. Since Snake's tranquilizers were effective in keeping her unconscious, he simply placed her on a couch in the crew lounge. She would be fine. One of the Gurlukovich mercenaries would find her there, and that would be that. He was hoping to finish by the time she woke up and give her a call afterwards to discuss it. Naruto bounced lightly on his toes, opened the door, and peered down the dimly lit corridor before launching himself into a silent sprint. When he got to each bulkhead, he hopped over them with a light step and carried on. A patrolling Gurlukovich mercenary nearly caused a problem when it crossed Naruto's path of vision. However, he wasn't paying attention as a soldier because he was dancing and listening to an MP3 player while keeping watch over his area of the ship. As far as Naruto was concerned, it felt too good to kick the man in the head and knock him out for his carelessness. The song had to have been good enough to warrant a kick to the temple. Reflecting on his most recent KO, Naruto turned around and headed back to the location where he had just defeated his opponent. There, he heard Russian speaking and heard a radio going up. Just as he was about to enter the tanker's hold, a door a short distance in the past opened, letting mercenaries pour out to see where the earlier attack had occurred. He had just triggered a warning among the Russian soldiers who were breaking in. As he entered the hold through the door, Naruto said to himself, "Oh well. They're not looking for me, and it's not my problem. What could possibly go wrong?" They could run around like rats all they want, as long as they don't find me. It wasn't as if they would encounter him or anything. They had the wrong direction. XXX. In the interim, in the darkened corridor with Snake. As bullets whizzed through the hallway, Snake took cover on the wall side of one bulkhead, his USP ready. He was clueless as to what had happened. He found it odd that all of the other exits leading back up to the deck were sealed, but other than that, he was sliding through the corridor fairly easily 1 minute, and then he was locked in a firefight with a small group of Gerlukovich mercenaries the next. Suddenly, as one of the soldiers approached Snake's position, he fired 3 shots in his back, causing him to fall to the ground lifeless. One of the others followed through the bulkhead and witnessed his comrade's fall. He turned to face Snake after hearing the shots that killed his comrade and raised his weapon, but Snake grabbed him in an instant and used him as a human shield, moving into the doorway and firing his handgun, killing 3 more soldiers. The last man standing, the one in Snake's grip, shook his head and begged, "Please don't kill me." With a shrug, Snake said, "Well, since you asked so nicely." Then he struck the man's head against the bulkhead's metal, rendering him unconscious. There, the issue was resolved. He could now proceed to the hold. As he proceeded, he silently asked himself, "How the hell did they know I was here?" Still having to ask himself, he eventually came to a door at the far end of the hallway and turned to go find the hold on his own. A lone survivor of the Gerlukovich mercenaries' investigative team cautiously made his way into the hallway after some time. After closing the door, he heard spurs jangling, which made him turn and ask, "Who goes there?" While pointing his automatic gun at the possible threat. Rather than approaching the man directly, as an intruder would, the quiet footsteps continued forward until they were in full view. The distinctive marks of one individual were cowboy boots, a vintage duster, and revolvers in belt holsters. "Oh, Shalashaska," the man exclaimed, relieved that he was not facing an enemy. "Why are you here? We thought you were with the colonel." Ocelot shot the man in the head and left him falling to the ground dead in a spray of blood. "What the man asked, his body thudding off the metal floor. Ocelot didn't say anything. The death knell accompanied a flamboyant display of gun-spinning maneuvers as Ocelot casually approached the door from which the young soldier had just returned. "The colonel will be joining you soon, comrade," he said as he turned and moved deeper into the ship, towards the hold, before turning the hatch shut to seal the exit to the deck. XXX. With Naruto. Tanker's hold. Naruto was standing on a balcony that overlooked the lower area. It was fortunate that he was up and out of the way because below, on the ground, stood more than 100 Marines in formation, staring at a screen that had a man speaking. This man was most likely the setup's chief executive, and Naruto could swear he had seen him somewhere before. That was unimportant and he could attempt to attach a name to the face at a later time. He couldn't let his thoughts wander just now because he had work to do before reaching the new Metal Gear. The unskilled Russian mercenaries had taken control of the ship, and the poor Marines below were unaware of this. And he couldn't tell them without either betraying Olga or risking being pelted with shells by the men he would attempt to warn. Neither of those were desirable outcomes. Therefore, all he could do was try to move on and put an end to this before there was any significant bloodshed. He didn't think the Marines would set a trap like that on their own ship, given the Semtex that was all over. After he got what he wanted, Sergei Gerlukovich was probably going to blow the ship. By then, they would be at sea and out of sight of prying eyes. In actuality, they were most likely at sea right now. It was a while since they had set out down the Hudson River. Naruto, desperate to get away, glued himself to the wall and cautiously made his way up to hide in the ceiling's shadows. All the way across the room, he could see another balcony with a door leading to another area of the hold. He had to assume that the massive machine of total annihilation was somewhere farther away because he couldn't see it in the current room. There was only so much ship to search for what had to be a massive object. In any case, why give them this lengthy speech? Perhaps to draw attention to the fact that these guys are the faces of the newest, baddest Metal Gear yet. That ought to have been a significant issue from the start. If nothing else, Naruto could tell from the screenshots he was able to view while crawling across the ceiling that it was just as large as Rex and also had an extremely sleek appearance. After a while, He reached the other balcony and got ready to descend to the higher position. He landed silently on it and surveyed the Marines listening to the commandant, whom Naruto at last identified as Scott Dolph, exclaiming, "Holy crap, that's Colonel Jackson's father-in-law." He was familiar with him from their little world. Not only did he know about him because of that, but also because of vile rumors that put the man at the core. Especially the fact that Vamp was his lover even though he was meant to be married. Sincerely, Naruto could have lived his entire life without having to think about something like that, especially involving someone he knew, and he wasn't going to seek confirmation from anyone other than the people who told him Fat Man and Chinaman. He had no desire or need to know. Even if it had been a joke, why in the world would they tell him that? Commandant Dolph was in charge of the new Metal Gear project, either way. Furthermore, the Metal Gear Ray was the name given to the new device in the speech. Glancing over the remainder of the hold, he noticed someone slinking out of the door across from where he'd come in, and he smiled to see it was Snake. He didn't have anything against Snake, so hopefully his purpose wouldn't conflict with Snake's goal in any way. Naruto moved past the older soldier and into the next section of the hold, stopping abruptly as he passed through the door. He could see Metal Gear Ray clearly, and from a front-side view, it looked perfect. Its two arms were fins, albeit fitted with machine guns, and it appeared to have aquatic capabilities. Its trisectional mouth likely contained some sort of weapon. Its highly maneuverable reverse-jointed legs were fitted with missile pods for ground defense, and it had a tail and a missile pod on its back. It appeared to be alive. It appeared to even have a face. Although Ray's potential for direct combat made it seem more terrifying than Rex's, the latter was more frightening simply by virtue of its appearance. He didn't think he would have the same chance to defeat Ray even with all of his speed that allowed Rex to keep him out of sight. That piece of equipment certainly looked mobile. Not only did this room feature the enormous Ray on display, but it also housed dozens of Marines and Commandant Dolph, the man standing on a stage in front of Ray, addressing the men in front of him while cameras were pointed at him. How am I going to get this thing off? Naruto pondered for a moment, considering what action to take, thinking to himself. It would be impossible for them to loiter in the hold for an extended period of time. In order to try to blow it up and reduce casualties after they left. However, what about the mercenaries from Gerlukovich? It was not a good idea to go up against more than 100 armed Marines, but they needed a plan if they were going to get Metal Gear Ray out of there. Maybe they could lift it out somehow by opening the hold out to the deck, but how would they do that again? Though he didn't believe he had enough explosives on him to destroy that thing, he might be able to if he managed to locate weak points or the cockpit. Anything could always be taken down in some way. And Dolph completed his speech below while he considered this. The speaker came to an end when an African-American man dressed in camouflage fatigues and a cap stood in front of his Marines. "We the Marines will lead the charge into a new world order with Metal Gear Ray," he said, pausing to let the men absorb the silence before concluding, "That is all." Dismissed. It must have lasted for several minutes. As soon as the cameras went off, cutting off the transmission to the other rooms, the Marines all gave the commandant an immediate salute, and he returned the favor. Dolph turned around to face the noise as footsteps on Ray's platform behind the commandant's stage broke the eerie silence in the room. "Excellent speech, my friend." He thought it strange that the spurs were jangling, but he still said, "Who the hell?" Ocelot walked up behind one of the massive Ray's legs and said, "Gift of the Silver Tongue. They say it's the mark of a good officer, and of a liar." Without hesitation, he turned to face Commandant Dolph and said, "Americans are too in love with the sound of their own voice to speak the truth. Identify yourself," Dolph ordered. The Marines in the room swarmed the stage, pointing their assault rifles at Ocelot and waiting for the order to fire on him, without so much as a verbal order from their commander. As was his custom, Ocelot made a grand gesture when he said, "My name is Shalashaska, but you can also call me Revolver Ocelot." Feeling the hairs on the back of his neck stand up at last seeing the bastard again after 2 years, Naruto muttered to himself, "Son of a bitch." He now wished Sniper Wolf was present, or at the very least, that he had a weapon of his own with which to strike that bastard at a distance. Would he be able to force the Marines to fire on him? That would undoubtedly address the issue. The Marines all started to advance, but Dolph stopped them with a sweeping motion of his arms. "What do you want?" Dolph inquired. "I doubt you came all the way into a guarded and disguised tanker by accident or just to gawk at the weapon." Ocelot ignored the grunts and turned to face Ray, as if impressed by its design. With a gesture that prevented Dolph from facing the possible threat, Ocelot started to move in Dolph's direction and said, "This machine will be quite useful." Dolph sarcastically asked, "What are you planning to do, steal this thing?" Yes, Naruto thought dryly to himself. If he could drive, he would steal it. Ocelot would, of course. "Steal?" Ocelot asked, sounding as though the wording had offended him. No, I'm simply taking it back." One could argue that Ocelot was the reason Ray was created in the first place because it was an anti-Metal Gear weapon and he had leaked the Metal Gear specs to the public. Because Ocelot was receiving all the attention, Sergei Gerlukovich had the opportunity to approach Dolph from behind, put a gun to his head, and take hostage. The Marines noticed the activity, but it was too late. The Russian had already apprehended the man. Why did Olga's father have to be such a hassle, damn it? And from whence did he originate? Though Naruto assumed Olga had to get it from somewhere, he had some moves on him. With a small throwing knife drawn, Naruto kept it ready. He could try to take down Ocelot after striking Sergei in the wrist, which would prevent him from firing. If his initial move hadn't caught Ocelot off guard, perhaps he could. In either case, Ocelot would be caught in a deadly fire as the Marines responded to the sudden action. Yes, that was a sufficient plan to stop this in its tracks. Ocelot commanded, "Nobody move," to prevent the Marines from acting hastily in an attempt to free their leader. "This ship now carries enough Semtex on its key structural points to blow it right out of the water at a mere touch of this button," he said, holding up a detonator for everyone to see. The Marines reluctantly retreated from Ocelot and Sergei upon hearing that. That's right. No one has to die needlessly. At that moment, several Gerlukovich mercenaries descended from the ceiling and positioned themselves around the Marines, aiming their weapons at them to disable them. Ocelot informedly said, "Get a move on. We're almost at the target." More mercenaries followed suit, releasing Ray from its shackles so that it could remain safely on its platform. With a mocking sneer on his face, Dolph observed the Russian soldiers working steadily. "What do you intend to do with Ray? Sell it on the streets?" he asked Sergei. "I was raised in Snazinsk, formerly known as Chelyabinsk 70, the nuclear research outpost. After the Cold War ended, my home was bought out by the Americans," Sergei said, holding the gun closer to his head. Dolph asked in a tone that almost seemed bored, "Is there a point to this sad story?" "Not that you would understand." Sergei uttered a disgusted scoff. "Even the technology that gave birth to these weapons is Russian, developed by us. But Russia will rise again, and Ray is the key." He was offended by his captor's callous attitude. Land, friends, dignity, all sold to the highest bidder, the United States of America. A few chuckles from Ocelot interrupted his monologue, bringing it to his attention. "I regret to inform you, old friend, that I have no intention of selling Metal Gear. As I said, I've come to take it back." Ocelot walked past the Gerlukovich men who were holding the Marines in a kind of standoff, leaving them perplexed. Didn't he support them? The oldest comrade of Sergei? Yeah, back to the Patriots, he had to be kidding. The American Patriots. This was his chance. Maybe he could take Ray and threaten to spread its specs the way Ocelot did with Rex to get himself some leverage over them. He didn't know. He'd work that out later, but for now he could keep a piece out of their hands here and now. How could he get it though? Naruto's teeth snapped shut so hard he swore he nearly broke them. Dolph looked shocked to learn that they were also aware of them, saying, "The Lililulilo." The what? That was weird. Was that another alias for them? It seemed easier to just say the Patriots as far as Naruto was concerned. How is that even possible? Before he could approach Ocelot to ask more questions, Sergei tightened his hold on him and held the gun to his head. The Gerlukovich colonel felt that things were getting out of hand. "Ocelot, have you sold us out?" he spit out in disgust and rage. Ocelot deadpanned, "I was never in your employ, Gerlukovich." "Are you and Solidus still in league?" Sergei inquired. Ocelot carried the detonator with him, but he ignored him, turning his back to everyone, including the enraged Russian who could have shot him in the back if he'd wanted to. No hard feelings, Colonel. For all I care, Mother Russia can rot. Since when, Ocelot? When did you turn? Demanded Sergei. It's about 40 years too late for any suspicions, Ocelot remarked sarcastically, someone's sure attentive. It was during the Cold War that I left her. I apologize if you ever felt that we shared any goals with you and everything. He then laughed cruelly, saying, I'm afraid Metal Gear can only accommodate one person. You and your daughter, Gerlukovich, are going to die here. God damn you. Sergei shoved Commandant Dolph forward towards Ocelot hard as a form of cover while he trained his gun on Ocelot. Die you dog. Before his fellow Russian could even get off a single shot, Ocelot threw his duster to the side, drew his revolver, and turned to shoot Dolph and Sergei down, both of whom fell to the ground with their respective mortal cries of pain. Elderly people weren't supposed to get better at fighting, not in that way, but Ocelot had to make up for his potential loss of agility in some way, though Naruto doubted that had even decreased over the previous 2 years. His eyes widened in shock as he thought, did he get even faster with those stupid things? I barely even saw him draw. He never even saw him manually cock the hammer back either. Sergei, looks like you were long overdue for retirement, Ocelot said, pointing his still-smoking gun barrel at the fallen pair. The half-dozen Gerlukovich mercenaries surrounding Ocelot had to pause for a moment to process what had just happened because it had happened so quickly, but by the time they did, he had already drawn his second revolver and shot them all down in quick succession. Naruto asked himself, what am I going to do? Since diving down there would not resolve any issues and would only land him in trouble. The show is over. In that hold room, Ocelot cried out to the Gerlukovich mercenaries and marines, it is advised that you flee immediately if you want to survive. This ship remains in the lower harbor of New York. If you swim for your life, you might still make it to land. With that warning, Ocelot activated his detonator and detonated the ship's charges, causing the ship to rock repeatedly due to the explosions. An enraged Naruto was still high out of the way on the balcony where he could see Ocelot walking towards Rei's cockpit, but in a matter of seconds, water began to pour in through the damaged hull walls, knocking soldiers to the ground and quickly beginning to fill the hold. Naruto got up and ran to the intersection of his balcony and the catwalk Ocelot was using to get to the cockpit. He knew that, even with the ship swooping down around him, he would never have a better opportunity to grab him than at that moment, so he leapt up on the balcony railing, his hand on the HF blade, ready to take out Ocelot before he could even wonder what hit him. Though it hadn't been a factor previously, Snake's tranquilizers slowed Ocelot's movements even though he wasn't a foot lackey and he had been caught off guard by someone using Naruto's method of attack before, back when he wasn't paying attention during his years-past duel with Snake. People like that tended to learn their lessons. It would have been a stroke of luck if he had leapt perfectly after the first movement, ending with him cleaving off Ocelot's other gun hand the way Gray Fox had at Shadow Moses and capturing the slimy old soldier. You ninja types can't come up behind me twice. Ocelot shouted out, drawing a reloaded revolver and pointing it directly at Naruto who shifted from preparing to attack to holding his sword up in preparation for the shots that would have no doubt been coming right his way. A grin found its way to Ocelot's mustached face at the sight of the young man. Kid. Too much time has passed. How are things going for you? As the gopher for the Patriots, do you enjoy it? Given that you were once a foxhound, you ought to be accustomed to it, right? So you were aware of that? Naruto asked in a low growl, able to feel his anger rising at the fact that this guy was referencing such a thing about him. Don't worry. In the near future, I'm searching for a better opportunity, and I believe I've found it with Rei. I believe I can handle it. Take this as my 30-day warning. It was pretty fortunate that you arrived here, Ocelot remarked, grinning. About that, tonight, we had just one special guest in mind. However, as you are present, I must inform you that your services are no longer needed. You've already served your purpose, and the two of you together will tell a far more compelling tale. What, are you ready to settle this once and for all, even if it means avoiding some bullets from the Deadeye shot? Asked Naruto. Ocelot. But as luck would have it, Snake emerged on the platform below, his USP aimed at Ocelot and the water rising to his level. When Ocelot saw Snake, He placed one hand on his head as though he was in pain and trying to fight something. When he stood up, he spasmed as though a seizure was taking over. If it wasn't a seizure, then something else took control. During his epileptic fit, Ocelot removed his outfit's glove and right sleeve, exposing an arm that was different in color from his own. "It's been a while, brother," Ocelot mockingly said to Snake. "And who do you think you are?" With suspicion, Snake inquired. Ocelot flexed his right arm and hand and said, "You know who I am." His voice sounded like Ocelot's, but it also had a hint of an accent that neither of them had heard in the previous 2 years. Beneath his headband, Snake's eyebrows shot up. "Liquid." Naruto cocked it curiously, but only one of them did the same. "No, that's Ocelot Snake. I took Liquid's life. Ocelot is simply growing older." With the gun still aimed at the young blonde, Ocelot's gaze shifted to Naruto and he grinned smugly, saying, "Hello there, Naruto. You appear quite worn out, my son. To be quite honest, it doesn't fit you." He laughed a little and shook his head, adopting the loud, haughty accent of Liquid while saying, "I wonder how much of yourself you left behind at Shadow Moses." Narrowing his eyes at the Ocelot that appeared to be under a spell, Snake uttered, "I thought he left you behind at Shadow Moses, Liquid." "Ah, not so young anymore, Snake?" Ocelot asked, his eyes seemingly dancing with mirth. "Time is drowning you. I understand, my brother. It makes sense why Naomi disqualified you from the effects of the Fox-Die program." Before he could even enjoy the fruits of his taunt, Ocelot's right arm started to violently spasm about, as if he was having an internal conflict with himself. "Get out. You look half past dead as is," he said to himself. "Liquid, get out of my head." Naruto had to leap backwards away from the troubled man in order to block a spastic shot that flew in his direction. "Kid, what's happening?" Yelling up to Naruto, Snake questioned. "How am I supposed to know? It's been years since I've seen you both," Naruto replied as Ocelot let out a loud yell. Afterwards his body seemed to be getting itself under control once more, but Liquid in his mind. "That is extremely strange." When Liquid opened his mouth to speak again, he continued where he had left off, teasing Snake with, "the price of your physical prodigy." It was obvious that Ocelot had been further driven back into his own psyche. "You'll be another deceased clone of our elderly man in a few more years. Older brother is our source of raw materials. But I live on through this arm." Big Boss wasn't exactly at his youngest when they created his copies, he said, raising the prosthetic arm in the air. "That is messed up. Ocelot only lost his right hand when he had an arm transplant in Lyon in 2005. Did he really put Liquid's arm on his body to replace the one that Gray Fox chopped off? And why the entire arm?" Liquid Ocelot was yelled at by Naruto. "Why can't you just die like a normal person? You don't get second chances like this one. You blew your chance." Just as the makeshift platform collapsed, Liquid Ocelot smirked fiercely and leapt up from his spot on the catwalk onto Ray's head to reach the cockpit, just in time to see another explosion rock the ship and send Snake staggering on the stage below. Despite the tanker housing the conflict that was violently rocking and swaying, Naruto pulled out his SOCOM and fired at Liquid, his vision turning red at the mere notion that Liquid was still alive. "Master Miller is not given another chance. Gray Fox, you son of a bitch, is not getting a second chance. Why are you so damned unique?" All he wanted to do was jump onto Ray and rip Liquid or Ocelot or whoever it was apart. He growled at him, a rugged tone creeping into his voice as his whisker marks deepened. "You can't use your angry powers to shoot, can you?" As Metal Gear Ray roared to life, Liquid Ocelot teased in amusement, opening the cockpit and slipping inside with ease. He threw his gun to the ground, deciding it was useless, and then he freely pumped orange chakra to give himself a boost as he leapt onto Ray's head and started beating at the cockpit opening, his fists repeatedly thudding off the ceramic titanium alloy as the machine's eyes lit up and it started to move. After the last explosion, Snake had fallen from the stage into the water. However, he managed to get back up and emerge just in time to witness the irate young blonde man attempting to tear through the reinforced armor to slay Liquid Ocelot. Ray started swinging its head violently to try to get Naruto off. It was one thing for him to be stuck to Gamabunta for an entire afternoon without having anything to hit him with to get off, but when Ray did, It smashed its head through the balcony and into the hold wall, sending Naruto flying into the twisted metal balcony that he had to grab onto to avoid falling into the rising water. "You simply lack the necessary skills, don't you?" Liquid taunted again, apparently feeling victorious in his new death machine. And why on earth wouldn't he have felt victorious? He was safe inside of a waterproof Metal Gear. Naruto and Snake were, for lack of a more detailed explanation, not in one. "You're going down right along with this tanker." The Marines still in the room attempted to open fire on Ray with their assault rifles, but they might as well have been throwing rocks for all it was worth. A careless swipe of a fin and Ray knocked the hapless bastards into oblivion, their bodies joining the other deceased in the water. Naruto pulled himself up to a stable portion of the balcony as Ray stomped on the stage Snake stood on, breaking it down the middle and forcing him to cling to one edge of it to avoid slipping into the water. After Ray stuck its head into the still rising water and appeared to take a deep breath, it lifted its head back up and opened its mouth, unleashing a thin, powerful jet of water that fired like a laser, cutting right through the hull and bringing in even more water faster than before. Snake was able to cling to his stage just enough to be able to stand up and survey the scene while reaching for his codec. "Otacon, we have a problem," he said. "Shadow Clone Jutsu, or Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Boss says we need to get out of here," the clone said, appearing out of nowhere and skipping and hopping across the debris in the water to reach Snake's destroyed stage. "Right now." The two leapt back to where Naruto was leaning down over the balcony with an outstretched hand, and Snake said, "No shit." The clone gave him a boost and threw him up to where he could grab a hold of the original, and he quickly dispersed, saying, "We're stuck down here, kid." The only open hold exit that wasn't blocked was the one we used. The ship trembled once more as Ray demonstrated its ability to float by submerging itself and waiting for the leak to stop gushing water out of it so it could escape. "We have to try to get out, can't we just try the way we came in?" It's underwater, so Naruto didn't even know where the thing was weak point. Great, now going after Ray would be suicide for sure. They needed to escape, but his Rasengan couldn't bust through a reinforced steel door specifically designed to be able to stop thousands of pounds of water pressure. How did Sergei intend to release his men before everything went horribly wrong? Snake moaned, putting his hand to his ear to turn on the codec. "Otacon, the ship's sinking. It might be our only shot." I'm aware. Verify with me that you're not still on hold," Otacon pleaded with his ally and friend in return. With a dry sigh, Snake and Naruto ran back across the balconies in the hold. "Okay, I won't," Snake said. The men from the other rooms were wading through the water beneath them in an attempt to find a way out, and the remaining Berlukovich mercenary and opposing marine forces were fighting steadily in the water as they tried to get away, but explosive damage destroyed the ladder to the balcony that held the open door. "Damn it, the only route out of Otacon is," he started to say before Naruto grabbed him by his collar and stuck to the wall, crawling along it and the ceiling to get them across to the other side. "Never mind." After they made it across, Naruto dropped Snake off on the other side safely before tumbling down to the balcony himself. The two then opened the regular door and started running through the corridor to return to the ship's upper decks, with Naruto's hand still in his ear while he attempted to make a phone call. "Damn it, Olga isn't picking up. I've got to go make sure she got out," she said, presumably still without her radio from when she got into her altercation with Snake. "This is about to collapse," Snake argued with Naruto, saying, "Either we leave this place immediately or we're going to do this." After that, he returned his focus to Otacon on the codec and said, "Tell me you're close, give me some good news here." "I am, and I'm currently circling the debris. From up here, it looks like a complete mess. Snake, who's with you?" After hearing nothing over the line and receiving a glare from Naruto, Snake continued with more precise identification, saying, "Yeah, the kid. It's not Naruto. When Ocelot lost his mind and started tearing the place apart, he was there. In any case, prepare to lower the ladder and retrieve us when we arrive on deck." "I'm on it. Just make sure you get your ass out of there, Snake. I don't really want to fish your corpse out of the bay. That'd be really hard to swallow." Fortunately, the hatch leading to the small locker area next to the engine room was not sealed when the two of them reached the end of the corridors. The ship was not submerged yet, or else the water would have been seeping in from above as well. Just as Snake was about to run into the engine room itself, Naruto grabbed him by the arm and dragged him to another hatch nearby. I tried it from the other side, kid, but this thing is sealed. Naruto seemed to be motivated to open the door more quickly after Snake insisted that the other side had been sealed. My final 2 years of life were spent aboard an aircraft carrier. Please stop arguing with me about ship-related issues. It may have been sealed from the other side, but that just means that one side has to be open, Naruto said, effortlessly spinning the hatch loose and slamming the door open. Snake gave him a confused look as they ran along the stairs to the ship's actual crew level. The Gurlukovich mercenaries had rigged the doors to keep the Marines as confined as possible in the ship's lower decks. A truly ludicrous maneuver, but one that worked well for threatening situations such as the one involving the Semtex. After ascending the stairs and making their way to the crew's lounge, Naruto saw Olga still unconscious and laying on a couch, exactly where he had left her. "Thank you, Kami," he thought to himself as he approached Olga and attempted to rouse her. "Come on, Olga, wake up. We seriously need to get the hell out of here now." When she did not respond after 15 seconds of shaking, Naruto turned to Snake, who was getting ready to flee. "What the hell did you trank her with?" "Whatever it was, it's even slowing me down." Lethargic. As Naruto carefully lifted Olga off the couch, Snake exclaimed, "Kid, one of those to the thigh will put a grown man down within 10 seconds. It was becoming concerning at this point. "Whatever, let's just go already. I hit her with 3. I don't even know how many times I hit you," and he was complaining about being sleepy. Just what was this brat supposed to be? Now that the water was overflowing onto the deck, they ran out of the crew lounge and through a hallway with windows that looked out to the exterior, demonstrating how high the water was in relation to the ship. "Fuck, not that way, not that way," they exclaimed. "Are you sure we have a way out here?" Naruto uttered as he and Snake both changed course and headed back up to the bridge and observation deck. Two were pushing it to maintain sufficient control, but his callable platform board was unable to support the 3 of them. As they shot up the stairs to the upper levels, Snake remarked, "There's always a way, even if you have to make your own." The walls of the hallways appeared to blend together until they reached the bridge, which was a bad omen given the ship's distorted, off-kilter angle. Snake had been staggering around the halls, and Naruto had to focus chakra to stay perfectly upright lest he drop Olga. The two had to swim the remainder of the way out of the ship, with Naruto taking care not to drown the girl on his back. She was really under deep if being fully submerged in water couldn't wake her up. Water started pouring into the ship from levels above them to the point where they could no longer walk properly and had to swim instead. Taking deep breaths, the two managed to escape the sinking ship, but before they could gather their thoughts, Ray emerged from the water on the opposite side of the wrecked tanker and stood on the barely visible metal sections before roaring and leaping high into the air, landing in the water to swim off. Naruto and Snake were easily pushed aside and sent under again, and the massive metal construct hitting the water created a wave that swept away the bodies that had floated up to the surface, both Gurlukovich mercenaries and Marines alike. And this was supposed to be something simple, so they both emerged from the water again, hoping that no more unpleasant surprises awaited them tonight. XXX. Alongside Ocelot. As Metal Gear Ray glided through the water as though it had always been there. A living aquatic animal moving beneath the surface of the waves. Behind the controls sat Ocelot, who appeared to be returning to normal and reporting to his superiors what had just happened. "Yes, exactly where we talked about. I have pictures that show Snake and Uzumaki were present." He laughed to himself. "Yeah, I know you didn't really like the boy, but he's not your problem anymore." The cipher was very helpful. "I'm excited to see the newsflash early tomorrow morning." His attention was primarily focused on the people speaking to him, but he was idly observing the marine life maintaining a safe distance from Ray, as if they could sense it was intended to cause no harm at all. As he sat back in his chair, feeling triumphant, a smirk slowly crept across his face and he said, "I would say that the Marine Corps' plans are on indefinite hold." Ocelot then paused to wait for whoever he was speaking to. "Mr. President." XXX. Deadly. A small smile appeared on Snake's face as Naruto and Snake eventually noticed a smaller vessel in the water simply sailing around the scene, and the horn honked. Good old Otakon. Now all we have to do is swim. How in the hell? A second Naruto appeared out of nowhere, and he found himself with his arm wrapped around the back of its neck, he said. "Swimming is for regular people," declared the two Narutos, one with Olga and the other with Snake, as they charged over the choppy waves, attempting to maintain their balance and reach Otacon's boat. With a look on his face that suggested he wanted to smash the clone into oblivion, but that would have dropped him cleanly into the water, Snake held off on hitting clone Naruto's head until after they had boarded Otacon's small boat. "Ah, you dick, is that what you do when someone tries to help you out?" the original Naruto said, clutching the back of his head where Snake had struck his clone. The force of the punch nearly sent him falling onto the deck while holding Olga. He would have preferred swimming to that, at least his pride would have, but Snake moaned and cracked the knuckle that had struck the clone. "You could have picked a less emasculating way to help if you ask me. How are you guys doing? What the hell went wrong in there?" Otacon questioned from his tiny station, where the ship's captain stood at the wheel. Sitting against the ship's edge and finally able to relax, Snake said, "I'll tell you, just get us out of here, Otacon. Get us way out of here." Pointing to another ship approaching in the distance, he continued, "I don't think we want to be caught here, do we?" "To where?" the scientist inquired in an attempt to chart a path. "I need to find a way to get in touch with her men who are still in New York," Naruto remarked, sitting down similarly to Snake with Olga still in his arms. "As far away from New York Harbor as possible." He then noticed that Otacon had turned his back on him, as if he hadn't heard him, and had not addressed him. "I know there are still some out there. They had a helicopter." Evidently he still harbored some resentment. Snake could tell what this was and assumed he had made his point to Otacon by then. "Don't sweat it, kid. You've been offending him for the past 2 years. Along with Wolf and everything, you know." After scowling and using his hand to find the right frequency on his codec, Naruto said, "Oh. Well, if I'm in the way, then I'll just go." "Not a problem. Snake, even though you do age like a fruit, it was good to see you again." "Ha ha." Snake scoffed, adding, "But hold on, you don't have to leave. Don't you think we ought to try figuring out exactly what the hell went wrong in that tanker tonight, given what we just came out of? How come you were there at all?" "I was there to stop Olga's dad Sergei from getting Metal Gear," Naruto said, regretting that he had to wait at least a minute or two for his platform board to arrive from where he had hidden it beforehand all the way out to the harbor. "I intended to attempt to damage it, sabotage it, or do something else. And after that, I was most likely going to catch Ocelot as well. I have a lot to answer to him for now, even more." "Why?" Snake had to pose this question because Naruto had made it clear that his goal was not to halt the development of Metal Gear derivatives in the same way that philanthropy was. After all, he had willingly put his neck under the guillotine tonight. For her, Naruto simply nodded toward the girl with the scars on her face as she slept. "She asked for my assistance, and I believed I could provide it. But I was useless. Ocelot still had Metal Gear. He still had her father. I just can't seem to defeat that old bastard in a respectable manner. Furthermore, what was that item on Liquid's arm?" Otacon noticed that and asked, "Liquid's arm?" Snake decided to give an explanation, saying, "Ocelot seemed to go crazy when he saw us. He completely lost it, and it seems that Liquid's spirit entered his body through the arm he received to replace the hand Gray Fox severed in Alaska." The development of an arm causing someone's body to be possessed intrigued Otacon, asking, "Like a ghost or something?" Snake scoffed and uttered, "Ghosts aren't real." The whirring of the machinery sounded out over the rain that was still falling in the storm, and Naruto sheepishly finished once he felt the scrutinizing eyes of both Snake and Otacon on him. "Like hell they're not," he interrupted, finishing with a sheepish demeanor, "but you weren't talking to me, so I'll just stop now." Fortunately, his platform board had a good sense of timing, as he hopped aboard as soon as he could manage to keep a tight grip on Olga. Snake nodded gravely, not wanting to even know how many mercenaries and marines had perished inside that tanker. Before continuing, Naruto surveyed the 2 philanthropy members and said, "I believe I'll adjust my codec frequency after this just to be safe. I will calculate 140.76. All right, don't be strangers." He then took off on his board, saying, "I'd really not like to keep meeting up with you guys only for things like this." "He's probably going to take her to Brighton Beach," Snake muttered to himself as he watched Naruto's board head back towards the city to drop Olga off somewhere. If he were a Russian mercenary, that's probably where he'd set up shop, so if Olga's group had a base of operations for this mission, that was probably where it was. Though Snake could hear him, Otacon thought to himself, he could do something like this for that girl that tried to kill you, whose father tried to take a weapon like Metal Gear Ray. but he could kill Wolf in cold blood the way he did at Shadow Moses. Otacon shook his head and carried on maneuvering the boat. I don't know if I can explain it, Snake. I just can't. However, I find it difficult to like or trust him. Snake said, he's a good kid, but he said nothing more about it. Otacon's problem with Naruto was personal. He wasn't like him, and he didn't seem to be able to understand Naruto either. He wasn't going to push the issue if it didn't have to be. Empathy was a luxury that many people, including Snake and Naruto, wouldn't get from more normal people like Otacon, even though the man appeared to try to understand Snake. The two continued their journey in silence until the ship that had been following far behind burst into a fiery blast that scared the daylights out of Otacon and alerted Snake. The flames on top of the water burned, illuminating the stormy night as the raindrops futilely attempted to put out the fire. Otacon, what the hell just happened? With a dejected expression, Snake observed the scene. We'll find out later, Otacon said, shaking his head and adjusting his spectacles. He then returned to navigating the ship. The fact that the tanker had crashed exactly there was still a bothersome thought in his mind. I for one don't want to drive this thing over to that. XXX. Somewhere in Ontario, Canada, on the following day. Too bad Olga had lost her radio. He would have wanted to at least check in with her to make sure she was okay, and she wouldn't get a very welcome surprise when she woke up and found that her father had died during the mission. Naruto had dropped Olga off at a hospital close to where he knew someone would be able to find her and more or less improvised a beacon that sent the rest of Grlukovich mercenaries in the area right to him. He had to avoid a few bullets because he was seen as a bad guy by them, but it was a good deed for a friend who needed him. He had a lot of ground to cover to reach his safe spot for any operation performed in America, so he flew his board into Canada from that point on, staying low enough to stay under radar. He wasn't on a deadline, but his instinct told him to put as much distance between himself and the sunken tanker at New York Harbor as he could, and if it hadn't been for that awful feeling in the pit of his stomach, he would have stayed in New York until Olga woke up. At sunrise, he had taken the time to stop in a forest and catch a few hours of sleep before moving out again. And that awful feeling showed up as a bothersome beeping inside his head, which made him wake up from his forest sleep to answer his codec. Hello? Colonel, what's going on? In a drowsy tone, he asked Colonel Jackson, making sure that Jackson had a short list of potential frequencies he'd use that he forced him to memorize, even though he reset his codec's frequency for safety reasons. Rapture. What in God's green earth did you do? Jackson didn't seem happy to be having this conversation, and he said it in a low, serious tone of voice. You ask what I did. What do you mean? Now fully awake, Naruto sat up straight and said, I didn't do anything. I didn't kill anyone. That tanker thing wasn't my fault. It turned into a major clusterfuck. Jackson continued to serve as his Patriot's handler, so informing him about Ocelot would either make no difference or expose the man. In the first place, why were you attacking an oil tanker? We don't hit civilian targets, the commanding officer angrily snapped at his blonde subordinate. You are aware of that. More than any of them, you were aware of that. You were the good one, the one who wasn't on the verge of going rogue. There wasn't a single civvy on that ship, I swear, Naruto said, attempting to defend himself. There was a lot of stuff on that tanker, Colonel, but oil wasn't one of them. Every Marine. I didn't do that, but it went to hell. What do you think people will think or say when it's all over the news, kid? They possess your photo. As you and Solid Snake are having a friendly conversation like old friends, a tanker full of oil rises in the harbor. Since 2 in the morning, I've had no stop calls. There was not a drop of oil anywhere that he could see, so he needed to know what was going on. Tell me what you think happened, he said, referring to the picture that they had of him and Snake. Please. Give it to me. Did I not always treat you well? Okay. Jackson uttered, letting out a long sigh. It's on every station and channel across the nation. Radio and television. Essentially, it's claimed that Solid Snake and you were members of the eco-terrorist group Philanthropy. When the Navy sent the Marines to deal with your threat, you two launched an armed assault on the tanker and took control of it. However, you blew up the ship in the harbor, killing everyone on board, including yourselves. Why are you calling me if you believe I actually did it? Naruto questioned him. You may be a lot of things, but are you really that cowardly to blow up a ship while you're still on it? Something like that you would never touch. Particularly if you were on that ship with any sort of comrade. Since I've been ordering you're crazy. blonde ass for the past 2 years. I believe I can identify some personality quirks. Before there was a pause, Naruto laughed in spite of himself and said, Colonel, I didn't do that. I'm not a fanatic. You may never witness me fight, but I take my opponents on head-on. I remained inside the mission's boundaries. No one was killed by me. You're legally dead, kid, so it doesn't really matter. However, I'll work to clear your name after your passing. Just don't make any foolish decisions. For once, you're not in danger. Rapture is no match for you. You're unbound. Now vanish however you desired. He didn't win. Ocelot was employed by the Patriots, a group that seemed to be in charge of everything noteworthy in the US. Ocelot took Ray and sank the tanker to hide his tracks. How could there be another tanker, and one carrying oil, too? They just pulled a fast one on him. In other words, while he was free, there was a good chance they wouldn't bother him again, but he wasn't at all free. He was a criminal, charged with causing an oil spill that claimed many lives. They declared him dead, and he would never be able to see his sister again. He might try to sneak back into the country, but he knew that someone would be watching her to make sure he couldn't reach her without triggering the alarm of every Yahoo in the West Coast who carries a gun. With a solemn expression, Naruto said, I won't be contacting you again, Colonel. And thanks. Although you were my handler for the Patriots, you were a decent man, I know that. Go somewhere quiet and far away and get yourself a girlfriend or something. Rapture. Colonel Jackson's final remark severed the connection, leaving Naruto by himself in the woods. He sat there thinking for an extended period of time, not even bothering to light his board to move, not caring how hungry he was at the moment, then got up and punched a nearby tree hard enough to smash a crack the size and shape of his fist into it. It was only at that moment that he turned on his platform board and started riding, heading west through the woods. His codec went off again while he was flying low, and he answered it with a, yeah, while suppressing the growl of rage. Save the attitude, kid, you're not the only one who's pissed right now. In a listless tone, Naruto uttered the word, snake. Hey, guess what? Terrorists, we are dead. I was informed. Hooray! Otakon put in a special body for his justification after the second tanker blew up. They had broken into a facility a year prior and had taken Liquid's real body, minus the arm, for just such an occasion. Snake wasn't sure how Naruto got away with being declared dead, but perhaps it was because no one would inquire about someone like him who, as far as he knew, had no family in America. So, what are you seeking? As he was ready to go into hiding, Naruto asked rather impatiently, whatever it is, it better be on the way to where I'm going or it's not getting done. Can we have a meeting? Are you being followed up on, or is someone listening in on our talk? Not at all. Otakon resolved that minor problem. He and I ended up having a compromised frequency. What say you? Not at all. Therefore, yes, we can get together, but not in the lower 48. He had no intention of returning to the majority of the United States without a very good reason. Good, since we also don't feel like staying down here, Canada? Hell no, hanging around here, anywhere in this country, is not a good idea either. Visit Alaska. If we need to, it's simpler to go somewhere else and conceal ourselves there. I too have the ideal location. Where? Just get up there and give me a call when you're ready to see. No one alive knew that neck of the woods better than him, so he could tell you where to go. There was definitely one place he could go to hide for a while to try and get everything worked out for the time being.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.